So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Izuku time traveled with full powers and had harem? Movie. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is Time Travel. Izuku Midoriya by Armored Lord 1115. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. No one pav. We watch our main protagonist Izuku Midoriya, also known as Pro Hero Deku, and he is the #1 hero and symbol of hope in Japan. He is walking on the battlefield watching as everything is set in blaze with people sitting on the ground begging for money or just dying from starvation. Shigaraki gaining AFO was a massive hit to the hero society, and with the release of the older AFO it became chaos and a lot heroes lost their hope and closed their agency to wallow over their misery. It seemed that the new reformed League of Villain, who was under a new banner called Paranormal Liberation Front, where their leader Shigaraki Tamura has grown mature and planned a very good strategy to crumble the peace in the society, with some members contributing like Dabi, who used this chance to reveal his identity as Tuya Todoroki to deal a massive blow to the hero society, making the trust in the hero society crumble. Now the battlefield is reminiscent of when Quirk has first started, with the people of Japan divided into two groups: those who support the Paranormal Liberation Front and those who are still holding hope that the hero society isn't over. Many of the people has realized how much the heroes have been hiding behind their lawyer back and have been using their quirk to show off and deal damage to property, so they wanted to take part in the equality. They wanted to use their quirk freely without having to be arrested for it. There are people who found that the hero lost and chose to side with the Paranormal Liberation Front in order to survive, since they used this opportunity to offer food, shelter, etc., which any sane person would jump to the offer. Now everything was left to the young generation, with Izuku being the only one who fought much harder, along with Katsuki Bakugo aka God Dynamite, #2 Pro Hero, and Shoto Todoroki aka Frostburn, #3 Pro Hero. It was hard on those three young pro heroes, given that some students sided with the Paranormal Liberation Front, like Minoru Mineta, who chickened out mainly because they were offered anything if they joined the organization, which every student refused except him. He was of course killed later on by Shigaraki Tamura, who had no reason to keep him since he saw him as a nuisance and only wanted to crumble the hero society further by advertising to the citizen their organization by showing that even heroes are joining them. Now Izuku is sitting in a base created by the Public Safety Commission for emergency like this. He could see some citizens who were quite injured and were placed in a room of their own being monitored by healers, while people like Izuku had his own room since he contributed a lot. He was laying on his bed and next to him was his girlfriends Itsuka Kendo aka Battle Fist and Momo Yaoyorozu aka Kriti and Melissa Shield, #1 inventor in Japan. Anyone who knew Midoriya knows that he is a stuttering mess who can't keep a conversation with a girl for a minute, so the most common question would be, how did he lend not just one but three beautiful girls? Well, apparently in Izuku's second year at UA, those three have confessed their feelings for Izuku and were willing to share him. Izuku accepted, given that he gained confidence thanks to OFA users and All Might, and started dating the three. This news spread like a wildfire around the campus and many people envied him, but Izuku was not any regular boyfriend. He always gave love to the three fairly, not favoring one more than the other, and the three girls were satisfied. The parents were at first skeptical with having their daughter sharing one person with two other, but when they saw Izuku and got to know him better, they gave their blessing, knowing that he will treat their daughter properly. Now we see Kendo opening her eyes, rubbing it to see Izuku without a shirt on, revealing his muscles, something she admired a lot. She then said, "Honey, something bothering you?" Izuku looked at Itsuka and smiled, saying, "Nothing wrong, Itsu." Itsuka bonked his head and said, "Don't lie to me, Izu. I know something is bothering you." Izuku rubbed his head and said, "It's just how long is it gonna take for this war to end? How long do people have to live in fear? I may admit that this war helped clean the heroes who aren't serious about their line of work, but the time for it to happen is honestly the worst. Keep in mind we are still fresh graduates and we are forced to take decision that could decide the fate of the country itself." Itsuka understood Izuku's dilemma and could agree. Another female voice cut in and it was Momo, who said, "Izu, if you were worried about us, then don't. We are pro heroes as well, and keep in mind you are still human and we want to help you as much as possible." Another female voice cut in and it was Melissa, who said, "I might not be pro hero like you three, but I am strong enough to support you indirectly, like how Papa did to Uncle Might." The air turned cold at the mention of All Might name. It was no secret that All Might was a father figure to Izuku and an inspiration to the young generation of heroes. It was at the climax of the first war that Izuku was knocking on death's door and All Might shielded Izuku and the other pro-heroes that were down with his life. Melissa covered her mouth and said, "Sorry Izu, I forgot what he meant to you." Izuku then shakes his head before bringing the three girls into a hug and said, "Don't worry Melissa. All Might was a true hero to the end. Even after he lost OFA and essentially becoming quirkless, he still fought and sacrificed his life for me. No, he sacrificed his life for Japan future. That's why we need to keep smiling and end this silly war." The three girls smiled with Melissa asking, "Speaking of which, how is Katsuki and Shoto doing? I heard they got injured when fighting Dabi Violet Company commander along with a high-end Nomu." Izuku then said, "Katsuki is doing fine thanks to quick save. She was able to rewind him back to health, although I feel bad that she had to do this kind of thing at the age of 11. Itsuka sighed and said, "I understand Izu, but she is the one who offered to help." Izuku said, "I understand Itsu, but I don't like watching her heal other until she fall unconscious from fever. I still see her as my own daughter and it breaks my heart to see her every day in such a state." Momo pat Izuku back and said, "She is also our daughter Izu and we are proud of her. After all, she inherited your heroic trait of self-sacrifice." Izuku nodded his head with a little smile, proud of his daughter, and said Katsuki should be with his girlfriend Kami. As for Todoroki, he should be with his girlfriend Uraraka. Melissa then said, "I still can't believe that Katsuki of all people is dating someone at some point. I thought he was interested in Kirishima, but turns out Kirishima was dating Mina Ashido aka Pinky. As for Todoroki, well, I certainly didn't expect him to end up with Uraraka. Don't get me wrong, she is a very nice and bubbly person, but they rarely interacted before at UA." Itsuka then said, "Well yeah, what you expect from a guy who was stoic for most of his life get a girlfriend, so she probably hid her feelings for him thinking that her poor status will ruin Todoroki's status, but turns out Todoroki was already interested in her at the beginning of first year at UA, just like how we liked Izuku but thought he was dating Uraraka because of how close they were." Izuku then said, "Thank you girls for being in my life, I am extremely grateful." The three girls said, "No problem hubby." Izuku planted kiss on the lips to the three girls before they left to take a small shower together, which didn't last more than 10 minutes because the Paranormal Liberation Front is taking the water supply of Japan for themselves to lure the people to their side. Izuku and Itsuka and Momo put their hero costumes. Izuku walked followed by his three fiancé and was walking in the hallway where he was met with Shoto, Todoroki and Okako Uraraka along with a frustrated Bakugo and a lively Kami. Izuku then said, "Hello, you four had good night's sleep?" Bakugo glared at Izuku and said, "Do you think we get to have a good night's sleep, nerd?" He was hit in the head by his girlfriend Kami, who said sternly, "Reminding me of Mitsuki Bakababe, he only want to make sure you are in top condition for future fights, so go apologize to Izuku now." Bakugo grunted and said, "Sorry nerd, just stressed with everything." Izuku then said, "Don't worry, I couldn't sleep as well and we are all stressed. I just hoped someone was able to sleep in such condition." Shoto said, "I wasn't able to sleep well. Our encounter with Tuya was an emotional roller coaster for me, having to fight my older brother, but luckily I had Okako with me to keep me sane." Okako brings Shoto arm in between her breast and said, "Don't worry Sho-chan, I will always be there for you." Shoto smiled at her before giving her a kiss at the lips, making Katsuki angry, and said, "Get a damn room you two." Itsuka then said, "Do you have to ruin the moment, Bakugo?" Momo then said, "Seriously, you need to relax for once." Katsuki then said, "For your information, there is a war going on with hand job taking a stroll in the park." Izuku then said, "It is needed Kachan, if we keep this up we will lose ourselves in madness, so things like this are what reminds us of our goal, and that is to defeat the Paranormal Liberation Front." Katsuki said, "TCH. Whatever, just don't get carried away and let your guard down, number one." Izuku said, "I will, number two." Izuku was walking with them until a voice came in his head. It was the first user of OFA. "Izuku, we need to talk." Izuku stops, alerting the other with Melissa asking, "Izu, aren't you coming?" Izuku said, "The first user want to speak with me." This alerts everyone as they stop waiting for the news. The first user then said, "Listen. As of now, Shigaraki and my older brother have gathered a lot of military's power and managed to gain support from other countries, and things aren't looking good for you. Even if you have OFA, it won't be enough. You are still 19 years old." Izuku face paled, worrying the other with Katsuki saying, "Say it nerd, what's going on?" Itsuka then pushed Katsuki back and said, "Calm down, I am sure he will tell us." Izuku then said the first user told me that AFO and Shigaraki have successfully managed to get support from other criminal organization from outside the country and that their power far exceed ours. The seven paled with Katsuki saying what the hell? Why does Handjob and Darth Vader look alike are getting support from other criminal organization while the other government official are refusing to help us? Uraraka started tearing up, which she was comforted by Shoto and said why? Is it the end of us? The first user then said I am not done yet Izuku. Izuku then said the first user still have something else to say. That shut them up with the first user continuing as you see OFA has grown quite powerful over the course of years and we learned that we can send the user along with a group of people that doesn't exceed 10 back to the past and if you are willing to do so you will be sent back to the first day at UA with your powers so what's your plan ninth user? Izuku gained a hopeful look and smiled brightly at his friend with Katsuki saying did something good happen nerd? Izuku said yes, as you see OFA has grown quite powerful over the years that a new feature was added which is time travel and if we agree we will be sent back to the first day of UA with all of our power. The girl fell to the ground and cried tears of joy while Katsuki and Todoroki sigh in relief with Katsuki smirking and saying what are you waiting for nerd, tell him we are on. Izuku mirrored Katsuki's smirk and said sure thing Kachan. Izuku then told the first user we agree to the terms first user and we are extremely grateful for such opportunity. The first user then said no worries ninth user you made us proud keep smiling and one day I hope I get to see you defeat my brother. Izuku nodded his head before the eight of them found themselves glowing with Melissa saying what is going on. Izuku said we are being brought back in time, this is our only chance and let's meet again my friend. Katsuki smirked and Shoto gave a simple smile. The girls hugged their boyfriend, fiancé before they vanished into thin air. No one pav. We could see a green-hair boy who was sleeping peacefully in his old room filled with All Might merchandise. He opened his eyes slowly observing his surrounding to see his old house and next to him in his counter was his old phone the one he was sure was destroyed in his fight against Muscular. His eyes were shut open when he heard the voice of his mother Izuku wake up today is your first day at UA. Izuku Midoriya she sadly died in the war when Gigantomachia AFO pet was going on a rampage she wasn't in shape so running took a lot of her health and before long she was on the ground panting for air before she was crushed by a fallen debris. Izuku couldn't stop the tears that were threatening to come out of his eyes, he couldn't fathom how hard it will be to be around dead people but he was interrupted by a voice which was Nana the seventh user of OFA who said Izuku, I know this is hard on you and I can't imagine it but you need to be strong for her sake. Izuku took a few deep breaths and said I am awake. Inko's voice rung one more time okay honey, food is ready you have an hour before school start. Izuku then stood up finding himself much taller Izuku thought what the hell. Daigoro the fifth user then said hey kid, that is normal you were given a growth spurt much earlier so you can control OFA to the fullest and you're welcome. Izuku's sweat dropped at the last line and said thanks I guess. Izuku then opened his drawer to look at his clothes to see All Might themed clothes Izuku's sweat dropped along the users with Nana saying wow, Toshi would be proud. Izuku then said nah, he was freaked out when he saw that but man my younger self sure had no sense of fashion. The fourth user then said kid, those clothes won't fit you anymore. Izuku then sighed and said I guess I will have to ask my mom for clothes that belong to my father and call All Might about this. Izuku then took his phone and found Toshinori contact he then tapped on the number before the sound of ringing echoed through the small room, the voice of All Might was heard from the end of the call young Midoriya is something matter. Izuku breathing was loud but he was calmed by the users of OFA he then said hi All Might, I have a problem right now and the clothes you send me doesn't fit me anymore for some reason I have gained a growth spurt. All Might then said that is weird but I will inform Principal Nezu about this so make sure to at least come early so we could give you new UA clothes. Izuku nodded and said thank you All Might. Don't push yourself okay. All Might was surprised with the level of care that Izuku has shown he knows that Izuku is a big fan of his but everyone even him know that he is strong and could take care of himself so he said no need to worry young Midoriya because I am here. Izuku chuckled really missing All Might's signature catchphrase and said I am sure you are but don't waste your 3 hours and make sure to eat well. All Might was worried now and said something matter young Midoriya you never usually pursue thing like that. Izuku then said I am worried of course after all I am your successor and you are my master. All Might gave a small smile, happy that Izuku was concerned for his health, and said, if that will make you happy then I will eat and won't do hero work today. Izuku then said, good, I hope I get to see you there at UA. All Might said likewise. Then the call was ended with Izuku having a big smile on his face, happy to hear his father figure voice after so many years, with Nana saying thank you Izuku for telling him to take care of his health. Izuku said, no need to worry Nana, I would be damned if I let him continue like this. All Might after the call ended with Midoriya, he was quite surprised with how the conversation went. He thought, is that really young Midoriya, the shy boy who stuttered a lot? All Might then rubbed his head with Principal Nezu sitting in front of him sipping tea and said, your successor is quite interesting All Might. All Might then said, yes, he is. Principal Nezu then said, but I am curious about what he meant with growth spurt. All Might then said, we will see today. Principal Nezu then said, I will have to inform his homeroom teacher Shota Aizawa about him arriving with another clothes until we can get his measures. All Might spit his tea and stuttered, did you say Aizawa is his homeroom teacher? This is really bad. Principal Nezu then said, no worries All Might, you need to have some faith in your successor. All Might then said, although I do heartedly have confidence in young Midoriya, but Aizawa is a different case. That guy has expelled an entire class of freshmen last year with no remorse. As a picture of Aizawa having a shit-eating grin was shown in both minds, with All Might shuddering and said, good luck young Midoriya. Izuku after his conversation with All Might walked out of his room with no shirt, with Inko saying, took you long enough. She turned around and was stopped as she saw a tall and handsome Izuku in front of her. She had to stop herself from fainting and said, my baby, is that you? What happened? Izuku chuckled nervously and said, I had a growth spurt last night I guess. Inko then said, oh okay, but why aren't you wearing anything? Izuku deadpan said, isn't it obvious my clothes are extremely tight? Inko then said, oh, I still have some clothes of your father, I hope it does fit you, just sit down and eat and I will bring you multiple clothes to choose from. Izuku nodded his head and sat down to eat his favorite katsudon. He then thought, it has been a while since I get to eat my mother katsudon. Izuku then started eating and before long he started scarfing the food and could only think with a tear, it's still delicious as it always was. He heard footsteps coming behind him, so he quickly wiped his tear, not wanting to worry his mother since he now knows very well that his mother gained weight due to stress of Izuku bullying for being quirkless. He now knew that his mother, despite her look, she was quite perceptive and not even scar removal cream could hide it from her. Inko came back with multiple casual clothes, but the one he liked the most out of them was a black shirt and black pants which complemented each other well. He wore it and found it comfortable although his muscles were seen through the shirt. Inko then gasped and said, Izuku, what's that scar? Izuku looked at his right arm to find the scar he gained from his fight against Muscular and internally cursed. He started panicking, trying to find an excuse, but he was saved by Nana, who said, tell her that you got it from the fight with the sludge. Izuku said, Mom, this scar I got it from the sludge incident 10 months ago. Inko then said, don't lie to me young man, this is the first time I saw this scar. Izuku then said, because I hid it with a scar removal cream. This seemed to convince Inko, who started tearing up and said, don't scare me like that again Izuku, my heart is not strong for this kind of scare. Izuku seeing this hugged his mother in a tight embrace and said, don't worry Mom, I am now a proud UA student who is aiming to become a hero and All Might is going to be a teacher there. Inko then said, I heard that's the reason why I easily agreed into joining UA. Izuku said, thanks Mom, but I need to leave early to get a new sets of clothes. Inko then said, good luck and I want to apologize for not supporting your dream back then, just know I am extremely proud of you. Izuku teared up before he hugged his mother affectionately and said, I will never worry you again Mom. Inko cried as well and said, oh, I am so happy to see you grow up into such a fine man. Izuku nodded his head before he took his school ID and left his house with his school bag. Izuku was walking the street to the train station but was met with none other than Katsuki Bakugo, who looked at Izuku but he gave a small smile. He then said, you know, I never expected I'd see the old hag and old man again. Izuku said, I feel you, if it weren't for the users I would have broke out in front of her. Katsuki nodded and said, so you had the same problem. He pointed at his clothes then at Izuku, who chuckled sheepishly and said, yeah. That belonged to my father and I already called All Might about it, so I am going early to have my new measures. Katsuki huffs and said, I am coming with you. Izuku then said, sure, so what are you going to do with Kami? Katsuki said already called her and she decided to stay at Shiketsu for the moment mainly to not change any major thing. Izuku nodded and said logical. Katsuki then said what about Melissa? Izuku shakes his head and said didn't have the time to call her with me trying to find a big size clothes and my talk with All Might took longer than I expected. Katsuki look at Izuku eyes and see the sorrow he then slap Izuku in the head like how his mother did to him and said don't give me that look you are the #1 hero symbol of hope it wasn't your fault he died he wanted it to happen he felt useless when he lost his power and wanted to die protecting you. Izuku rubbed his head and said is that the famous Mitsuki slap? Katsuki said don't change the subject Deku. Izuku then said I understand but even you couldn't help regret not being strong enough. Katsuki didn't say anything but just sigh and said it's thanks to OFA that we get to have this chance. They were walking when a speed quirk villain ran with a bag full money towards them with Hiro chasing him but Izuku and Katsuki with their experience as pro heroes they found themselves instantly move and grab the low time villain by the face before slamming him to the ground and a neck chop from Izuku which knocked the villain. The heroes that came followed by the reporters that have caught the two-teen fight were amazed at how just two-teen took down the villain like a pro. The same pro hero that scolded Izuku 10 months ago seemed to recognize him it was Death Arms followed by his sidekick who had the same hero costume. Death Arms then said I recognize you too, why do you two always involved in trouble? Izuku then said apologies, it was a reflex sir. Katsuki didn't like how the pro talked to him and said we did your job old man. Death Arms then said I will let it pass since you saved us some trouble and you didn't use a quirk so you can leave now and we will arrest him. Izuku nodded his head before dragging Katsuki who was having a glaring contest with the sidekick and said come on Kachan we are going to be late for UA. Katsuki grumbled and said fine. They both left but had to run away since the media wanted to interview them. Arriving at UA gate Izuku was the center of attention because of his look most girls had heart-shaped eye with Katsuki smirking at Izuku and said well nerd it seems you have an early fan base. Izuku had a horrified look as he knew from experience how scary fangirls can be and shuddered. Izuku and Katsuki entered the school and walked for a few minutes until they found themselves in front of the principal office. Izuku takes a deep breath before knocking on the door after getting confirmation he opened the door to be met with All Might to transform and Principal Nezu who was still sipping on his tea. All Might had his jaw to the floor when he saw his successor and Principal Nezu was impressed since he recalled how Izuku looked like before. All Might mutter Izuku is that you? Izuku then said yes, Toshinori-san it's me. All Might then said when you told me growth spurt I thought something like getting a few centimeter tall but not this. Izuku chuckled and Katsuki was impatiently waiting behind Izuku and said could we get this over old man. All Might looked behind Izuku to notice Katsuki Bakugo who didn't have the school uniform and said young Bakugo correct, don't tell me you also had a growth spurt. Katsuki nodded his head with Principal Nezu then said we have suitable school uniform that will fit well with you current size but before we bring that to you explain this. He turned the tablet revealing a video which shows Izuku and Katsuki taking down a villain easily with the title saying, to a student take down a villain like a pro. All Might was watching the video and was beyond shocked this was not Izuku he once knew. Izuku bowed and said I apologize Principal Nezu we knew that we didn't have license to fight villains so we prompted to use our physical strength to take him down since he passed between us and thought as a good citizen and aspiring hero we should take down the villain to help the struggling pro who was chasing after him. Katsuki didn't say anything but he only scoffed with Principal Nezu smiling and said I am not angry at all, actually I am quite impressed those moves are that of a pro. Izuku smiled and said thank you sir. Me and Kachan have been practicing to fight without our quirk after a certain incident 10 months ago. All Might understood that he was talking about the sludge incident and was quite surprised that he managed to accomplish something like that while cleaning the beach. Principal Nezu then smiled before jumping from his chair walking towards the wall pressing his paw on it bringing a scanner which scanned both Izuku and Katsuki opening two part of the walls revealing UA clothes. Izuku and Katsuki took their UA clothes before bowing to the principal and All Might and said thank you sir, I believe we have homeroom right now. All Might then said be careful you two, your teacher is Aizawa and he will expel you if you don't satisfy him. Katsuki and Izuku already knew about this but went with it and Katsuki said that guy doesn't scare me. And he stormed outside the room with Izuku smiling and said noted. Izuku also left following behind his friend to the changing room where they changed into their new UA clothes. Izuku was seen walking in the hallway along with Katsuki heading to their homeroom class, and they weren't in a rush given that they have 10 minutes left. Izuku found his arm being grabbed suddenly and looked behind him to see a beaming Itsuka who smiled brightly with tears in her eyes and said, "You've done it, Izu." Izuku, seeing his girlfriend, was extremely happy. She then jumped, latching herself onto Izuku with both her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck. She then started kissing Izuku with a lot of love, which Izuku did the same. Katsuki was watching the event unfold, completely frustrated that he can't have something like that with Kami since she's in the West. Itsuka and Izuku separated, leaving a trail of saliva. Izuku then smiled and said, "You're welcome, Itsu." Itsuka then landed on the ground and said, "We will need to catch up later after school, honey." Izuku nodded his head and said, "I hope I get to see the three of us together." Itsuka nodded before she planted another kiss on the lips and ran towards orientation. Katsuki then said, "Are you done, nerd?" Izuku smirked and said, "Jealous are we?" Katsuki glared at Izuku and said, "Don't get cocky on me just because you can be lovey-dovey with your girlfriend while I can't." Izuku said, "Sorry, man." Katsuki then placed both hands in his pocket before turning his back on him and said, "Don't need your pity, nerd. When I meet her again I will pound that ass to kingdom come." Izuku then smirked and said, "Just don't make me an uncle yet." Katsuki blushed before saying, "Shut up, nerd." Izuku laughed as he was enjoying messing with Bakugo. Izuku and Katsuki was seen entering the class, seeing some student already there like Iida, which both of them expected, but what they didn't expect is Okako sitting on Todoroki's lap having their moment while Iida is shouting, "What are you two doing? No PDA in school ground." Shoto looked at us and gave a small smile, with Okako getting off from Todoroki and rushing toward us for a group hug and said, "Thank you, Deku-kun." Shoto walked past a malfunctioning Iida who was surprised when he saw a tall and handsome Izuku. Shoto then gave a bro hug towards Izuku and said, "Thanks, man." Momo, who was sitting in the corner, had a smile towards Izuku, trying to stop herself from jumping on Izuku to keep a good example as a recommended student, but when she saw Izuku she couldn't help herself but launch herself at Izuku and making out with him in front of everyone, making Iida, who was trying to reboot, malfunction once more, while Kaminari was jealous and Mineta was bleeding from his eyes and nose from the erotic scene in front of them. Mina and Toru were squealing in delight while having their phone out taking pictures. Momo and Izuku separate from the long kiss and she said, "Miss you." Izuku said, "Miss you too, princess." They both looked at the shocked faces, with Mina rushing towards Momo saying details. Toru did the same and said, "How did you lend such a hottie?" Momo said, "Me and two other girls are dating him, and how well that's something you will have to figure out later." Mineta exploded when he heard that Izuku is dating two other and fell unconscious from blood loss. Izuku sat down knowing that Aizawa-sensei will be entering the room 2 minutes later, which Katsuki and the other followed his example, leaving the class confused, but it was answered by the door opening, revealing a sleeping bag, creeping everyone out when it stood up, with Kaminari trying to impress Jiro Mother Caterpillar. He was ear-raped and Aizawa made his appearance. He took a look around the class and was surprised when he saw Izuku group since they look much mature, but he just blamed teenage hormones and said, "For those who are sitting already, good job, but for those who are standing up, it took you 8 seconds to quiet down. You aren't rational enough, that won't do. You will have to change that. Time is of the essence. My name is Shota Aizawa, just call me Aizawa-sensei. Just take this and head outside." Izuku and his group stood up and left to the changing room, making Aizawa impressed but pissed at the student who were still frozen in their place and said, "Move it." They start leaving to the changing room following Izuku group. At the changing room, Izuku was seen hanging around Katsuki and Shoto. Their scar were shown, which wasn't much thanks to Eri in their time, who rewind them back to a better shape so they can fight much longer, since they couldn't lose any hero back then. Kirishima then said, "Those scars are so manly." Izuku and Shoto said, "Thank you." While Katsuki said, "Shut up, spiky hair." Kirishima said, "Spiky hair? My hair is not different than yours." Katsuki grumbles about rude redhead not showing respect. Izuku then left and was met with Momo, where they walked together. Todoroki and Okako were also walking with each other, and Kirishima was following Bakugo. Izuku and his group were seen on a training ground, with Aizawa smirking at them and said, "Good job, you 5 are on time, you irrational student." Izuku nodded his head, and 5 minutes later the rest of the class came. Aizawa then stood up and said, "You people are late. Take those 5 as an example of how a UA student should act. Next time I will kick you lot out of my class." The rest of the class nod their head. Aizawa then said we are gonna be doing a quirk assessment test. Everyone except Izuku and his group shouted quirk assessment test. Toru then said but orientation, we are gonna miss it. Aizawa then said if you really wanna make the big leagues you can't waste time on pointless ceremonies. Here at UA we are not tattered with traditions, that means I get to run my class as I see fit. You've been taking standard ice test most of your life but you never got to use your quirk in physical exams before. The country is still trying to pretend we are all created equal by not letting those with the most power excel. It's not rational. One day the Ministry of Education will learn. Bakugo, you managed to get the most point on the entrance exam. What was your farthest distance throw with a softball when you were in junior high? Katsuki said 67 meters. Aizawa then says right. Try doing it with your quirk. Anything goes, just stay in the circle. Go on, you're wasting our time. Katsuki walked to the circle and looked towards Izuku and Shoto and gave a wide smirk, and both knew what he is planning to do. Katsuki grabbed the softball and said try beating that Deku and icy hot. He then threw the ball not before adding the word die in the middle, shooting the biggest explosion which sent the ball flying 2 kilometers in the air. Aizawa then said all of you need to know your maximum capabilities. It's the most rational way of figuring out your potential as a pro hero. Everyone was shocked by the result, with Kaminari saying whoa, 2 kilometers, are you kidding me? Mina then said I wanna go, that looks like fun. The 5 just thought you screwed everyone. Mina. Zero then says this is what I am talking about, using our quirks as much as we want. Aizawa hair covered his face and said so this looks fun huh? You have 3 years here to become a hero. Do you think it will be games and playtime? Idiots, today you will compete in 8 physical tests to gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last has none and will be expelled immediately. Everyone was shocked except Izuku group, who weren't fazed with Daigoro saying I like that guy. Izuku said Aizawa sensei always had ways with suspense. Aizawa gave a shit-eating grin. Aizawa then continues like I said I get to decide how this class run. Understand? If that's a problem you can head home right now. Izuku and his group were excited and confident. Iida was adjusting his glasses. Mina then said you can't send one of us home. I mean we just got here, even if it wasn't the first day, that isn't fair. Aizawa then said oh, and you think natural disaster are a power-hungry villain, a catastrophic accident that wipe whole city? No. The world is full of unfairness. It's a hero's job to try to combat that unfairness. If you wanna be a pro you are gonna have to push yourself to the brink. For the next 3 years UA will throw one terrible hardship after another at you, so go beyond plus ultra style. Show me it's no mistake that you are here. Iida then brought a water bottle and drank and thought if I don't approve of this kind of hazing, but UA is the top hero program, I have no choice. Aizawa then said now then, we just wasting time by talking, let the games begin. Test 150 meter dash. Okako Uraraka vs Mashirao Ojiro. The race start with Uraraka using her zero-gravity quirk on her body without having to make contact with her fingers like before, and Ojiro was preparing his tail to launch himself. The race goes to Uraraka as her physical strength including her zero-gravity gave her a boost, resulting into 4:32 seconds, which is better than her previous score of 7.15 seconds. While Ojiro got 5.49 seconds and was extremely disappointed given that he was confident in his quirk. Aizawa was watching and was slightly impressed, which wasn't shown in his face. He thought Okako Uraraka, if I recall correctly, her quirk worked by having all 5 fingers connect with her target, but it seems she nullified her own gravity without touching herself. Very impressive indeed. Izuku Midoriya vs Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku knew very well that Bakugo isn't going to pull any punches, so he of course channeled OFA at 20%, shocking Aizawa and All Might, who was hiding behind a wall. Katsuki smirked and said I could see you are still holding back, nerd, but this is my win. Katsuki scored 2.03 seconds while Izuku scored 1.32 seconds. Aizawa then thought so. He found a way to stop breaking his arm. That's good. I was starting to doubt Nezu's sanity of letting the kid in with that terrible control, but from Bakugo comment he is still holding back. How much? We will just have to figure it out. All Might, who watching from afar, oh my goodness. Young Midoriya, have you finally found a way to control OFA? He asked no one. Katsuki grumbles at defeat and said this isn't over, nerd. I will win our next match. Izuku gave his own smile and said sure you will. Nana said nice score kid, I know you can do better than that. Izuku said I don't want to show my abilities that much, especially to All Might or even my other quirks. Nana nodded her head in agreement and said nice choice kid. Test 2. Grip Strength. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku used 10% gaining him 725 kg. Mezzo Shoji. Shoji scored 540.0 kg by having all three arms apply pressure to the machine. He was quite disheartened that he lost to test of strength to Izuku since used all of his arms while it took Izuku one arm. Aizawa thought I kind believe this kid is still holding back, I will make him use his full power. I don't want someone to half-ass it in my class. Test 3. Standing Long Jump. Izuku and Katsuki cleared the sandbox with Izuku using slight float to give him a push which wasn't noticed by anyone. Test 4. Repeated Side Steps. Minoru Mineta still got first place in this while Izuku was second place. The users were kind of disgusted with Mineta because they remembered what he did back then and were glad he was killed for his betrayal. Test 5. Ball Throw. Uraraka like last time scored infinity, shocking everyone who questioned how she was able to pull it off. Shoto then said her quirk is called zero gravity, so it was obvious the test was made for her quirk. The other felt embarrassed for asking such a dumb question. Aizawa then said Izuku Midoriya, it's your turn, don't get out of the circle. Izuku took the ball and stood inside the circle powering OFA at 20% and he was about to launch the ball when his danger sense quirk detected Aizawa using his quirk, prompting Izuku to stop and look at Aizawa and said, Eraser head, why did you erase my quirk? Aizawa was surprised that Izuku knew him and said, I am impressed that you know of me, but I have a problem with you. Why aren't you using your full power? Are you here to half-ass it? If so, then you have no place here at UA. Everyone was shocked that he would expel Izuku, who was dominating the whole test, and Momo and Uraraka and Todoroki were going to intervene, but Izuku stopped them and said, Aizawa-sensei, you just judged me without knowing my full capability of my quirk, so you obviously don't know how much percentage I have been using so far. Aizawa-sensei was impressed that someone had the guts to talk back to him and said, to enlighten me about your quirk that was destroying your body, although I am glad you had it under control or I would have expelled you. Izuku said, so far I have been using only 10-20% of my power. If I use more, the others will get caught in the blast. I am just playing it smart so I don't destroy the property and have to deal with an angry principal. Everyone was shocked, including Aizawa, who then sighed and said, fine, just do whatever you want, we will just have to find another way to test your full strength without destroying the property and risk angering Nezu. Izuku nodded before he took the ball once more and powered a 20% of OFA and threw it, causing a massive crater to form under him, and the ball was launched at the sky causing sonic boom. Aizawa was shocked and impressed by the score and showed it to the others, which said 12 km. Everyone was impressed at the score, with Kaminari shouting that's 20% of his power. Kirishima then said, so manly. Test 6. Sit-ups. Izuku and his group has completed the sit-ups. Test 7. Seated toe touch. Izuku and his group cleared the seated toe touch. Test 8. Long distance run. Izuku and his group has outran the others. Results. Aizawa then said, alright, time to give you your results. I've ranked you all from best to worst. You should probably have a good idea if you're standing already. I will just pull up the whole list, it's not worth going over each individual score. Aizawa pressed the button, revealing a holographic screen showing the result. This time the score was different, with Izuku being the first, Katsuki being second, Shoto being third, Momo being third, Uraraka being fourth, until last place, which this time is Minoru Mineta. Izuku looked over Mineta to see his pale face and he was muttering the words, no. I can't be expelled, I haven't got popular with the ladies yet. Izuku was disgusted with Mineta and looked over to Aizawa. Nana said seriously, is that what the little shit is thinking right now? No wonder he betrayed you guys. Daigoro then says that Aizawa guys should expel the midget, the kid doesn't have any redeemable quality. The fourth user then said, such a shame, his quirk could have been extremely useful if he trained it properly instead of staring at his female classmate body. Izuku sighed and said he should expel him. I don't know how Mineta managed to survive that long in UA in the first place, or why UA allowed him to stay, especially after all the stunt he pulled back then. Aizawa then spoke and said the next few words, shocking everyone at the class. Izuku Midoriya POV. The result of the quirk assessment test has finally appeared, with this time the results are different, with Izuku being the first, Katsuki Bakugo being second, Shoto Todoroki being third, Momo Yaoyorozu being fourth, and Okako Uraraka being the fifth. The last place was Minoru Mineta. Aizawa then contemplated for a few minutes before he said, Minoru Mineta, pack your bags and leave. Everyone was shocked, including us, since last time Aizawa made it into a ruse. I could hear the OFA users celebrating at having the traitor expelled, with Nana saying good job Aizawa. The fourth user then said, I am sure you are confused young ninth, as you see last time he couldn't expel him since you scored last and he didn't, but this time he scored last and he will be kicked out. Izuku said, well, that's logical, but I wonder how will that affect us on the long run. Ojiro then said to Kirishima, man, I thought it was a logical ruse to make us give it our all. Kirishima then said, nah, I am down for a challenge. Aizawa heard this and said, well, he did technically show little potential, but we don't want to get complaint from parents for assault on female classmate. Mineta cried tear of blood and said, no fair. No fair. I didn't get the chance to be popular with hot girls and get to build my own harem. He then rushed towards Momo in attempt to assault her. An unknown voice said, it's time young ninth. I found myself instinctively moving in front of Momo, bringing my hand back and hit Mineta with an uppercut and muttered, crushing evil, spreading the truth, Empyrean. Mineta was seen launched towards the wall of school and crashed into and continued until he was outside of the school. Everyone looked at me in shock, including Aizawa and All Might, who was hiding. Aizawa said, Midoriya, this attack was different from your original quirk. Luckily I had an answer for that because of the multiple quirk I had, so I scratched my back sheepishly and said, you see Aizawa-sensei, my quirk manifested the day of the entrance exam, meaning I took the exam quirkless, so I am still trying to understand my quirk, but if I have to come with a name I'd say it's some sort of energy manipulation. The fourth said, nice save young ninth. Aizawa and the others was shocked with Aizawa asking, you awakened your quirk at the entrance exam. That's explain why you didn't have control over it, and I thought you were an overconfident kid who didn't train. Izuku sweat drop said, Aizawa-sensei, this is just a theory, but I believe that my quirk activated since it required a good physical body to handle the backlash. Aizawa thought for a moment and said, that is logical. Aizawa then turned towards the shocked class and said, moving on. Kirishima said, sir, what about Mineta? He did get sent flying outside of the school through the walls. Aizawa said, doesn't matter, some UA bots will carry him towards Recovery Girl to heal him and escort him outside of UA, and Cementos will probably be here any minute to fix any damage. Everyone nodded their head with Kaminari saying, but man, that punch was something else. Aizawa said, that's it, we're done for the day, pick up a syllabus in the classroom and read it over before tomorrow morning. Midoriya, I apologize for judging you quickly, I should have read your files before assuming things. Izuku smiled and said, no hard feelings Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa nodded his head and said, one more thing, you will be having a replacement by tomorrow. He is a general course student, he might be physically weak compared to you, and his quirk is what people called villainous. He still have potential, so I expect you treat him with respect. Everyone said yes Aizawa-sensei. I then thought Sashinso will be joining us early. Daigoro said, well, it's better than that pervert midget. I then said, I am not complaining, to be honest. Back then I really didn't like Mineta, but I never spoke considering that I felt bad for the kid, but now I could see he is just a pervert who is not serious about the job. Speaking of which, what was that quirk that I used earlier? The first user spoke, it seemed the second user Gildarts Clive has awakened. Izuku asked second user, why now? The first user said he awakened late since he never used OFA much like we did before, so it was hard to bring his soul here in the OFA plane of existence. Izuku nodded and said, I assume the third user is similar to that Gildarts guy. The first user then said, that is correct young ninth, you will be speaking with Gildarts in your sleep, he will give you a rundown on his magic crush. Izuku said, magic? What do you mean by that? The first user smiled and said that you will have to see for yourself, after all it will spoil the fun. Izuku grumbles with Katsuki whispering new quirk. Izuku said, second user. Katsuki nodded his head and said, that doesn't change anything nerd, I will still beat you. Izuku nodded his head and said, good luck. Aizawa was seen walking behind the school gym where All Might is seen wearing his golden suit. All Might then said, Aizawa, that was a rotten move. Aizawa looked at All Might uninterested and said, All Might, so you're watching no talk show today? All Might then said, why did you expel young Mineta? You said he had potential. Aizawa then put his hand on his chin and said, maybe, because I don't want to be sued by angry parents because some person can't keep his hands and thoughts to himself. You saw it yourself, he tried assaulting Yaoyorozu. If he managed to do that, then you could expect having the funds landed by the Yaoyorozu be taken and we won't be able to train the other students. All Might said this is a hero school, so we could have given him proper training and rehabilitation. Aizawa then said, All Might, we are a hero school, we are not psychiatrists, and besides this is his parents' responsibility, not ours, that's why they will be informed and left to deal with him. Or are you playing favorite, All Might? All Might said, no, he's not my favorite, I just don't understand what's you reasoning for expelling a lot of student every year with no remorse. Aizawa then smirked and said, so you do admit you have a favorite student, maybe it's that Midoriya kid. All Might was shocked, but Aizawa said, whatever, it's cruel to let a kid keep dreaming of something that will never come true. Aizawa then continued walking away from All Might. Izuku was seen in class sitting next to Momo and were looking through the syllabus left in their class by Aizawa. He sighed as he already knew his classes since he is from the future, for God's sake, but he wanted to make sure that there were no slight changes because there were major things that changed, like Mineta being expelled. Nothing was too special, so Izuku could only stand up accompanied by Momo. They were pretty much holding hands, same could be said for Shoto and Uraraka, while Bakugo was walking in front of them. Since he did always have issues with people walking in front of him, it hurt his pride. Iida was being the same as he is, scolding both couples for showing PDA. Izuku really wanted the old Iida, the one who matured. It was no secret that when the war started and he experienced his first death, he was quite traumatized and blamed himself that if he didn't stick to the rules back then, that person could have been saved. That's why Iida has matured. He allowed things to slide, although it took effort from his part since he was used to overreact over the simplest thing, but now he became a very important asset in the war. He was quite a good tactician and decisive, making him move the hero ranks quickly along with Izuku and Momo and Melissa and Kendo. Izuku's heart hurt when seeing the innocent faces of his classmate, especially when he heard Mina claim that it wasn't fair. If it was their Mina, she would have scoffed and slapped her younger self and told her to wake up from those silly dreams. Izuku shook his head from that thought as he headed towards Class 1B, followed by Momo. They waited outside and saw a certain blonde-haired kid they knew very well, Nito Monoma, the one who had an ego that rivaled that of their friend Katsuki Bakugo. He also toned down after the war started and didn't feel like competing anymore after seeing some of his friends and family death. He even kept blaming himself that if he took his training in UA seriously instead of worrying over petty rivalry, he wouldn't have to watch haplessly as everyone died in front of him. Monoma noticed the 1A student and said, well, if it isn't Class 1A scum, what are you trash doing here? Kendo's voice was heard. Monoma. Monoma stopped, looking back in fear as he saw Itsuka smiling sweetly at him, bringing her hand up to knock him out, but Izuku decided to intervene. Itsu, let's go. Itsuka then said, okay Izu. She then jumped, embracing Izuku in a tight hug before giving him a kiss on the lips, which Izuku reciprocated. Monoma was watching, shocked that the big sister is kissing a Class 1A scum. Itsuka then said, where are the others? Momo said they should probably be waiting for us at the entrance of UA. Itsuka then nodded as she held on to Izuku's right hand while Momo held in Izuku's left hand, and they left together towards the exit of UA. Izuku, Itsuka and Momo were walking in the hallways of their school, the one that was taken by the Paranormal Liberation Front when they raided it, since UA is after all the #1 hero school in Japan. It was one of the reasons why things went south, since for a hero school as UA be taken easily by a group of lowlife is quite frightening for the people. After all, UA is known for pumping heroes like All Might, Endeavor, Best Jeanist E.C.T. They watched as student passed them laughing and overall held a smile, but they can see their dead bodies or some of them with missing limbs. It was quite frightening for the future #1. If it weren't for the users controlling his dreams or his thoughts, he would have gone mad. That was one of the reasons he was able to hold a conversation with his mother and All Might without breaking out in tears, and he was quite thankful he can't break in front of everyone, not when they need them. They walked outside and saw the group waiting, with Shoto and Okako holding hands, with some girls being disappointed and glaring hatefully towards Okako for snagging a hot boy. Same could be said for Itsuka and Momo, since Izuku was quite handsome himself. Izuku could only sigh as he saw Momo and Itsuka wrapping their arms tightly around Izuku before glaring at the fangirls, which was enough to give them the message to back off. Izuku then walked towards the group and said, hello you three, hope we haven't kept you waiting. Monoma was being jerk. Katsuki would have insulted Monoma right now, but he kept quiet since he and Monoma got along quite nicely after Monoma dropped the rivalry and worked well when Monoma copied his quirk Explosion, which helped doing double damage towards the enemy, especially when it comes to lieutenant level, and they were a great duo just like Katsuki and Izuku worked well together. Uraraka said, Monoma, I can't believe we will have to put up once more with his immature self. Itsuka then said, I understand how you feel, Okako. Shoto remained calm, his face stoic as ever, but Izuku then chimes in and said, we need to make plans for the future. We can't run around doing whatever we want, especially the fact that we need hero license to start acting without being reprimanded. That's why Principal Nezu and Aizawa-sensei should be included in our identity. Shoto then spoke and said, I could understand Nezu, but why Aizawa? Katsuki responded in Izuku place and said, Aizawa-sensei is a sharp hero. Despite him being always lazy, people tend to forget that he is underground hero, so the simplest unnatural move from us will make him suspicious. Besides, Aizawa-sensei has already dealt with death before, so he can keep himself sane for much longer. Uraraka then said, shouldn't we include All Might as well? Izuku said no. The reason is that if you remember his second fight against AFO, when he was told that Shigaraki is Nana's grandson, and when his master was insulted, he halted and it almost costed him his life. Both Todoroki and Katsuki nod their head. Itsuka then said, but what about Sir Night-Eye? Izuku said, let's face it, Itsu the guy doesn't like me. He still believes that Mirio is the best successor of OFA because he is a carbon copy of All Might. Katsuki grumbles and said he also kept wallowing over All Might predicted death, and it took the nerd to survive his foresight to convince him that fate can be changed, but he realized that in his deathbed. Izuku then said, let's stop talking and discuss this matter in a more private area. Momo and Uraraka and Itsuka said, our houses are far away from here. Todoroki then said, my old man is at the house and doesn't like me making friends because he think they will halt my progress of surpassing All Might. Katsuki said, the old man and old hag won't stop fussing over me if I bring friend in the house. Izuku sighed and said, thankfully I have sound block installed in my room, but I warn you, my house isn't the biggest place, so you will have to suit yourself. Itsuka then said, it's okay, and I am happy that I get to meet Auntie Inko again. Momo nodded her head with a smile. The six-time traveler found themselves in front of the Midoriya apartment. Izuku then said, be prepared because my mother is emotional. For those who don't know her, so you will see her rushing towards me, patting me from head to toe for any injuries. Katsuki scoffs, but it was a soft one. He also missed Inko. She wasn't like his old hag where she slapped him in the back of his head. Izuku took a deep breath before opening the door with the key, taking one step in the house, and before he could even announce he is home, a green blur was seen rushing towards Izuku, patting him from head to toe with a teary eyes. Inko saying, my baby, you are back. Are you hurt? How was your first day at UA? She was going to rant even more if it weren't for Izuku stopping her and said, it's okay, I am not hurt at all and my first day went well. Inko then calmed down and realized that there were 5 other with him she could already recognize. One she said, Katsuki, is that you have grown so much. Katsuki could only smile softly and said, hello Auntie Inko. Inko then hugged Katsuki, who hugged back. She then looked towards the 3 female and Todoroki and said, who are those for Izuku? Izuku, knowing what will happen, stopped the 4 of them from introducing themselves and said, Mom, it's best if we take a seat before they introduce themselves. She was confused but complied, sitting on the sofa. Izuku gestured for them to start introducing themselves. Shoto came first and said, my name is Shoto Todoroki and I am one of Izuku's best friend. Inko smiled and said, thank you Todoroki for being friends with my son. Shoto said, no problem Mrs. Midoriya, I am honored to have your son as a friend, he helped through a lot. Uraraka then came and said, my name is Okako Uraraka and I am also one of Izuku's best friend, and Sho-chan here is my boyfriend. Inko then said, thank you Uraraka for being friends with my son. Uraraka said, no problem Mrs. Midoriya. Itsuka came forward and said, hello Mrs. Midoriya, my name is Itsuka Kendo. Momo stepped in and said, hello Mrs. Midoriya, my name is Momo Yaoyorozu. Both girls looked at each other then said, and we are dating your son. Inko then started processing what the 2 girls said before she fainted. Everyone started freaking out except Izuku and Katsuki, with Shoto saying, aren't you worried that your mother fainted? Izuku said, relax, she was just surprised that just a normal for her to faint since she isn't used to me having friend, let alone a girlfriend. Itsuka asked, is that why you asked her to sit down? Izuku nodded his head. Izuku then said, now let's head to my room, but warning, my room is filled with All Might merchandise to the brim including my clothes. I will have to buy fashionable clothes. Both Itsuka and Momo giggled and said, we could help you with that Izuku shivered, including Todoroki and Katsuki, as they knew that women are quite dangerous when they are going on a shopping spree. Even the users of OFA except Nana were praying for the poor soul that is Izuku Midoriya. Nana could only think, what's wrong with shopping? Daigoro said you are a woman so you won't understand men's struggle. Nana had a tick mark and said what does that mean? Daigoro said nothing. Izuku then said that is going to be a nightmare. Momo laughed and said you are the #1 hero and symbol of hope yet you can't handle shopping. Itsuka then laughed and said how sad even the mightiest heroes in the world crumble underneath us in the power of women and their shopping spree. Izuku could only sigh as he entered his room filled with All Might. Even his bed was All Might theme, his watch was All Might theme and his wardrobe was All Might theme. Katsuki squinted his eyes and said those are hurting my eyes and it's seriously creeping me out. Shoto then said want help removing them Izuku. Izuku nodded and said yes please that would be extremely helpful. The six started removing the action figure and posters leaving of course some posters and action here and there but it was less than before. Katsuki then said much better. I seriously wonder how you are able to sleep with All Might face stalking you in your sleep with that big smile it seriously give me the impression of a pedophile. Izuku chuckled including the other at Katsuki comment before they locked the door and made sure that their voice wasn't heard from outside. Once they sat down Izuku said let the meeting begin. Izuku paused. We are now in my house after I decided that the best thing is to make a plan for the future so something like what Kachan did in the assessment test doesn't repeat itself. I then said now then we need a game plan for the important event that need to be solved efficiently. It's not much of a secret that because of the League villains none of us have received proper training, we only received experience. Itsuka said Class 1B did receive more training than your class but we lacked in term of experience so we hesitated a lot. I nodded my head and said first thing we need to do is reveal our identity tomorrow to Principal Nezu and Aizawa-sensei both need to know since I am planning to ask him to give us licensing exam much more earlier than before. Uraraka was surprised and said is that even possible? I know Eri was made a provisional hero at the age of 11 but that's just because her quirk was extremely beneficial. Shoto said I agree with Midoriya, Principal Nezu is known to have a lot of dirt on the commission so he could just give us a license. Momo asked but how are we gonna do this? People might find out about this and start questioning Principal Nezu's sanity to give license to a first year who haven't been in UA for much less a week. Katsuki then said we could ask him to make us do exam like the one we did before. He could arrange something like that for someone who throw money on big useless door. Momo and Itsuka and Okako sweat drop as we remembered the 0-pointer. I then said now that is settled we need to discuss the second important topic of this whole thing. We need to hold back on our abilities especially in the USJ since we don't want to give them any ideas of what we are capable of, especially the sports festival either should be cancelled or we don't attend it because Shigaraki will be watching it to get ideas on how to counter us. Katsuki scoffs but he stayed quiet. Shoto then said we are glad that you are with us Midoriya, you always knew how to make a good plan. I said don't flatter me. I am just doing my duty, besides you should start thinking of visiting your mother much earlier, maybe tomorrow or after tomorrow. Todoroki smiles and said yeah. You should all come as well. I nod my head and said now then I will take over calling Melissa to make sure she is doing well. As for you Kachan, you should probably consider having Kami transfer here at UA. Katsuki smirked and said you know nerd that isn't a bad idea, I really needed stress reliever. I then said sure man. Anyways we need to also suggest the dorm system much more earlier. Itsuka then said agreed, that will help us get closer with our classmate much more faster. Katsuki then said not only that it will strengthen the trust in UA that they are taking the student safety priority. Okako said well that is a nice view to think about it. I then said I wonder what will change with Mineta expulsion. Katsuki then said nothing, that little twerp was weak even before. Momo then said as much as he is weak we want to confirm the theory if he was the UA traitor. Katsuki said what are you implying? I then said she is implying that if he managed to sold us so quickly to the Paranormal Liberation Front, what makes us sure that he wasn't the one who took the files of the USJ during the stampede, or that he might have informed Shigaraki about the summer camp which was not known except by students and teachers. Katsuki got angry and said of course. That grape bitch was behind it all along. I then said now then I will have All Might the day of the USJ not do hero work to save his 3 hours for his fight against the Nomu, but from what I learned about my new quirk it's called Crush, although the first user called it Magic instead of Quirk. Momo was shocked and said Magic. Is that even possible? I nod my head and said that's what he told me. He said when I sleep I will meet him and he will give me a rundown on his abilities. Todoroki, who was shocked, asked what can it do? I then said similar to overhaul, but the difference it doesn't kill, it's something like this. I then focus on in a paper and used crush on it, making it divide into smaller part. Itsuka then said wow. I then did a hand sign returning the paper to its original form. Uraraka said I could understand what you are trying to say. You want to say that you could use crush to turn the Nomu into smaller parts and then be burned by Sho-chan or Katsuki here. I then nod my head and said correct. Now then let's give a recap about our plan. 1. Tell Nezu and Aizawa about our identity. 2. Become a provisional hero with the help of Nezu and his influence. 3. Holding back on our abilities and not attend the sports festival to not give information about our quirk. 4. Have All Might be able to fight at the USJ, which means I will have to stop him from ever doing hero work that day. 5. Dorm system introduced much earlier. 6. Have Kami transfer here at UA. 7. When we get provisional license we could save Eri much quicker and sooner. Everyone nod in agreement, but Katsuki said what if Handjob managed to escape from us again? Everyone seemed to also question it as well, so I said we will do nothing. Katsuki said what are you? He was frozen in place by Shoto, who said I am sure Midoriya have a reason for this, so don't destroy his room. I then said correct. I have a reason. If you remember, AFO is still out there and could have Shigaraki teleported to him. That's why we will let it continue until the rematch between All Might and AFO. We will be of course in standby to help in case something major happened, but other than that we will let history takes its course. After that we will capture the League of Villains, since we know about their hideout which was destroyed by Chisaki in their little fight over leadership. That's when they were emotionally and physically destroyed since their ace is gone, which is AFO. After that we will attack the doctor and take down his lab and make sure AFO copy quirk doesn't fall into Shigaraki hand. Everyone was shocked, with Katsuki finally calming down and said yeah. You were right, I forgot about that Darth Vader look-alike teleportation quirk. Itsuka then said I still can't believe how this is extremely easy to deal with now that we can take their ace card before taking down the injured league. That's such a brilliant idea. I then said the difference is that we have information to act on and the power to do so. Okako said you know Deku, you never failed to impress me. Shoto nodded and said I agree. I then smiled and said who do you take me for? I am after all the #1 hero and symbol of hope, so inspiring hope into my sweet comrades, girlfriends is the least I could do. Itsuka and Momo said okay Mr. Hope, we will give you a reward later. Katsuki was irritated and said get a room you three. I then said oops my bad, anyways you can stay here as much as you want unless you are needed somewhere. Katsuki stood up and said I am leaving extras. Uraraka said I don't have any problem staying here since I usually live alone. Shoto then said I will stay here to piss off my old man. Momo then said my parents are away for a business trip so they won't notice my absence. Itsuka said I will tell my parents that I am staying at someone's house tonight. I then nodded and said Momo and Itsuka could share the same bed with me while Shoto and Uraraka could share a futon, which I probably have. Momo said I will create you one. I then said are you sure? Momo then said creating a futon is nothing. I then nodded my head and said I will check on my mother and tell her about the four of you staying at my house, which I don't see her refusing. The four nod their head while Katsuki has already left the house. I then brought my phone and typed the number of Melissa. I pressed call and the number started ringing. I heard Melissa voice Izuku, is that you? I then said hi Melissa, sorry I couldn't call you sooner. Melissa said no, it's fine, how was today? I then said eventful. Katsuki has already left to home but the others are with me here except Kami since she is at Shikatsu and we will have her transfer to UA just like you should come to UA much earlier so we could be around each other more. Melissa said sounds like a plan. I then asked Melissa are you doing okay? Melissa said yeah. A little hard of course to see the peaceful faces of everyone, but I can manage. Luckily my father was too naive to notice anything unusual beside my growth spurt, which he didn't pay mind into it much and just give me his card to buy new clothes suited for me. I then said don't worry, you are not the only one here who got growth spurt. Melissa then said so what are you going to be planning? I then said tell Nezu and Aizawa about our identity and have our provisional license much earlier. Melissa then said that is smart of you, besides I am currently working on all of your hero costume and should be done by the end of the week. I nodded and said take your time Melissa. Melissa then said the shipment will be quite difficult but I will manage. I then said just don't overwork yourself okay? Melissa then said don't worry about me, I've handled far worse than that, and besides you people handled even much worse than I did, so the least I could do is have your hero suit ready for fight. I then said thank you Melissa, love you. Melissa said love you too Izuku, I expect lots of rewards when I return. I chuckle and said don't worry. I then got out of the room, which was the time where mom woke up from being unconscious. She looked at me and said baby, I had a dream where you brought friends at home and 2 beautiful girlfriends. I said mom it's not a dream, anyways I want to tell you they will be staying the night in my room except Kachan who will be returning home. Inko got shocked again, but she didn't faint and hugged me and said I am very happy Izuku for growing up and moving on from that terrible childhood. I then said thanks mom, anyways both of them aren't my only one, I have a girlfriend at Island, she is American, her name is Melissa. Mom looked at me at shock before she fainted once more, but I managed to grab her and brought her to her room. I returned to the room where Shoto asked so how did it go? I then said it went well, although she fainted again when I said that I have a 3rd girlfriend. Shoto sighed before he smiled and said your mother is pure Izuku, let's protect our mothers. I nodded and said I wholeheartedly agree. I then locked my door behind me before I sat in my bed where Momo and Kendo were sitting smirking, but we were interrupted by Shoto's phone ringing. I looked at Todoroki and he had an annoyed face, and I had a basic idea of who it could be. Then I had a smirk before I snatched the phone from Shoto's hand. He was shocked, but then I shushed him and said I've always wanted to prank Endeavor. I then answered the call and I could hear shoot to ooh. All of us were trying our best not to laugh, including Todoroki. I then said, we're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel this is in error, please check the number dialed, and please try again. I then hung up on him, and by now we were rolling on the ground laughing with Kendo recording the prank. Not 5 minutes later Shoto's phone started ringing and I could see it was Fuyumi. I then say hey Shoto, it's you older sister, catch. I then give him the phone, which he took and answered. We could obviously hear the conversation since he put it into speaker mode. Fuyumi said Shoto, what did you do? Todoroki innocently asked what do you mean? Fuyumi then said well, father tried talking to you, but whoever that person that was on the line ticked father off and he destroyed the gym and almost the house. True enough, we could hear Endeavor screaming at the top of his lungs with things being destroyed, and we couldn't help but laugh loudly. Fuyumi asked Shoto who was with you. Shoto decided to come clean and said my friends. One of them took the phone and pulled that prank on father, and I got to say I enjoy watching him in agony. We also recorded it, perfect blackmail material. Fuyumi couldn't help but chuckle and said I am glad you could make friends Shoto, just don't get carried away and risk having father target you and your friends. Shoto then said I will, love you Fuyumi. Fuyumi was surprised but said love you too little brother. We then heard Endeavor scream SHOTO. She hung up and we laughed so much that day before we had Itsuka send us the video to watch. We then decided to show it to Bakugo tomorrow before we all went to sleep. I then later found myself in OFA again, but this time a tall, muscular man with shoulder-length orange hair, usually kept slicked back, and a stubbly beard. His heavily muscular body is without a left arm and left leg, which he initially replaces with armored-like prosthetics limbs, completed with an armored knee guard to function as the knee joint. His chest sports scars, 2 of which are stitched, and his black fairy tale stamp. The majority of his torso is bandaged, as is his right forearm and left shoulder. His attire is rather simple. He wears a long, black, high-collared and tattered cloak with shoulder plates. Around his waist is a simple belt. He also wears loose-fitting dark pants, complete with an armored waist guard bearing plates similar to the ones on his shoulders, tucked inside simple boots. He then said hello kid, so we finally meet. No one pav. Izuku was seen looking at the second user of OFA. There was no one with him, which Izuku assumed that they either wanted to give him a private talk with him or they can't join for some odd reason. Gildarts then said if you are wondering where are the others, don't worry, they just left us both alone to have our own private talk. Izuku said so. You must be the second user, it's nice to meet you as well. Gildarts then said you probably wonder why you are here. Izuku said not really, I do know it has to do with your magic. Gildarts smiled and said so he told you already. Izuku said nah, he just told me that you will give me a rundown about your magic and said he won't say anything else or it will ruin the fun. Gildarts smirked and said well I am glad he didn't, since I want to enjoy seeing your shocked face when you learn about the awesome power you possess. Izuku nodded a little excited with Gildarts saying you were excited, that's good. I will give you information about your new abilities which you will have to practice of course, and I will demonstrate it so you can have a little idea on how to go. Izuku nodded and said thank you, but quick question, I've heard that you didn't use OFA like the other users, why that? Gildarts sighed and said I wasn't originally planning to inherit OFA since I had magic, but the first user was on his deathbed and I accepted the quirk and kept it, persevered until I passed it to someone else. Besides, my magic was strong as it is to require OFA, which was a little weak than with you right now, but I used it then and there. Izuku said if so why couldn't you defeat AFO, because your magic is extremely powerful. It's not me being overconfident, but I could deduce that you could shatter all attack he throw at you. Gildarts smirked and said you are a fast learned and smart, now I could see why they praise you a lot, and yes you are correct, I could shatter all his attack he throw at me, but you need to know AFO back then was more powerful than he was today. He had a lot of arsenal quirk, not to mention he had high tier villain by his side like his bodyguard Gigantomachia, the one you met in your timeline, so you probably get the gist. He knew how dangerous I was, so he worked on exhausting me first before he strike when I am at my weakest, not to mention AFO never play fair, he will get your family involved. That's why I never got remarried after my wife death. That's why when I learned that at some point our power will be transferred to the user in the future, it made me happy that magic won't die down. Izuku then said okay, I understand, I apologize if I brought you unwanted memories. Gildarts laughed and said don't worry kid, I am already over it, besides I'd rather die fighting, but you don't need to follow us, you still have a lot to do, including those 3 beautiful girls you are dating. Izuku blushed and said thank you. Gildarts then said let me give you a basic introduction about my crush magic. Crush is an extremely powerful caster magic that smashes everything the user comes into contact with into pieces. It can be used to both crack magic into pieces, thereby nullifying its effects, as well as to reduce the magic's power and to deflect it. Even the most powerful spells are rendered useless when faced with this destructive and advanced magic, which is difficult to control even for an extremely powerful individual like me. That's why I never go into any area where there is a lot of people, so I don't end up destroying the buildings. But you will be different, you can control what you want to crush and what not crush, but that will require concentration including control over emotion, so work on those too. Now then on to the effects. Crush occasionally manifest themselves as the target being separated into cubes. Interestingly, should crush be directly cast on another living organism, the recipient is separated into numerous, doll-like versions of themselves. After some time, the target should revert to their original form, but should I or you wish, you can manually change them back. Now then on to the final part. 1. Want you to learn hand-to-hand combat. Don't get me wrong, you are extremely talented kid in quirkless fighting, but there are a lot you can learn and you are still young. Although you managed to create your own fighting style, which I believe was shoot style, where you use you leg, it's a very powerful fighting style, but it's only suited with OFA. You need to have other fighting style that suits you with or without a quirk, and mine so happen to fit that description. That's why I will pass also my fights to you and we could have a little practice before you wake up. I am sure you are aware time passage here is quite different from outside. Izuku took all the information before he nodded his head. Gildarts smirked and said it seems you are shocked. Don't worry kid, I am here to help you control your new abilities, although I believe you can get it down in just a few days. Izuku smiled a little and said thank you. Gildarts then said I could see you are afraid, which is something normal for us to have. I know how your friends, girlfriends mean to you, but always know this, fear is not evil. It is good to know your own weakness. If you know your weakness, you can become stronger and also kinder. This managed to motivate Izuku, who held a fire in his eyes, with Gildarts smiling and said I like that fire in your eyes. Now then I will be passing my knowledge to you. I will let you brain rack on the information before we have a little spar, but no OFA used. Izuku nodded his head in agreement as Gildarts placed his pinky in Izuku's forehead and ran his magic towards his forehead. This showed a lot of information, which includes abilities, hand-to-hand combat, fights, AFO quirks and information. Izuku said wow, that's a lot of information. Gildarts smiled and said yes it is. Now then tell me, what did you learn? Izuku said currently you have 5 sets of moves which are crushing evil, spreading the truth, Empyrean or purifying truth, Firmament. It's where you hit your target with a powerful strike, imbued with crush. The force of this spell is so powerful that it is capable of launching said opponent great distances in the blink of an eye. The second attack is Mizuwari. It's a very dangerous technique since the user hits the ground with a powerful strike, imbued with crush. The resulting shockwaves will hit the target while also creating cracks on the ground. The third attack is All Crush. It's where the user thrusts their hand forward and creates a cross-shaped blast of energy in an attempt to disintegrate their target. The fourth attack, and I believe my favorite one, is Crushing Evil, Spreading the Truth. Absolute Heaven or Purifying Truth. Absolute Heaven. The user hits the target with a powerful strike, imbued with the force of the spell is able to cause an explosion on contact. The recoil leaves their arm limp and useless afterward. The fifth is Crushing Evil, Spreading the Truth. Ikazuchi, Gildarts imbues his fist with the magic, and when released, it resembles a lightning bolt. The sixth move is Crash Barrier. It's where you form a protective field of crash magic that destroys projectiles on contact and damages opponents who touch it, sending them flying backwards. Gildarts smiled and said, "Good. It seems you already know all my attacks. You were of course free to create your own moves since it's yours now, but be sure to be careful about using the fourth attack. But thanks to OFA, your recovery will be much quicker than mine, so consider yourself lucky, kid. Who knows, maybe you could solve the issues of having your arms go limp." Izuku nodded and said, "Thank you, sir." Gildarts then said, "No need for formalities, kid. Just call me Gildarts, Uncle Gildarts, Big Brother Gildarts, but don't you ever dare call me Grandpa since I am not that old." Izuku laughed but then said, "Thanks, Uncle Gildarts." Gildarts smiled and ruffled Izuku's hair before saying, "Now then, let's talk about my fighting style and how I want you to be strong physically without being enhanced with OFA. Back then I was able casually throw a person triple my size with just one hand. I will also teach you how to release your magic power to intimidate your enemy and force them into submission without lifting a finger." Izuku then gained a determined look and said, "Please teach me, Uncle Gildarts." Gildarts gave a smirk and said, "Good. Now stand up and try to replicate my fighting style. Remember, no quirk." Izuku nodded before he stood up. He has his hand next to him but was a little tense since he is not used to that change of fighting style. While Gildarts was casually standing, Izuku then rushed at Gildarts with no quirk at all. Although he was slow compared to before, he was still fast. Izuku jumped in the air and punched Gildarts, but the latter wasn't phased at all since Gildarts casually blocked the attack with his forearm. And he didn't even budge from his place at all. Izuku was shocked since All Might would be hurt a little from such a punch, but he didn't have time to let his guard down, so he followed with another punch and another one, but they were all blocked with just his forearm. Then Gildarts got bored of being in the defensive and hit Izuku with his elbow to the face, then followed by backhanding Izuku. Then he hit Izuku in his head, resulting in him smashing his face to the ground. Izuku, although hurt, he had high pain tolerance which allowed him to attempt multiple kicks from the ground, but Gildarts wasn't shocked at all. Instead, he grabbed Izuku from his leg before he started to swing him the air and threw him far away from him. Izuku was panting and asked, "Uncle, how come you are not even panting? You didn't even budge from your place." Gildarts smirked and said, "You are still way young to even match me at the moment in quirkless fight. That is, maybe if you used your quirk you would be able to push me, but that won't be enough. Besides, I have been trained into hand-to-hand combat far longer than you. While you only have the memory, you still have to let your muscle recognize the new fighting style to the point that you'd be able to do in your sleep, which we have enough time to make you into a reasonable fighter tonight, but expect hell." Izuku said, "Bring it." Gildarts then said, "Like your determination, kid, but let's see if you can keep this up." He then released a little of his magic, which was intimidating to Izuku. Izuku has spent his time being thrashed around by Gildarts, who took extreme pleasure in doing so, and at some point Gildarts used All Crush, turning Izuku into multiple dolls, thinking that Izuku will give up, but it didn't happen, as Izuku's will was strong enough to even fight under such circumstances. That Izuku said, "Not so fast, Uncle Gildarts. You got another thing coming if you think you can defeat me that easily. Now onwards, little me, let's gang on, Uncle Gildarts. You think you can beat armies of Izukus?" As all Izukus gave a battle cry, all Gildarts could think with a smile, "Well, this a first. I've never been challenged by a mini army before." At the end, Izuku managed to make Gildarts rewind him back to his original form because Izuku kept biting his head and even pull his hair, and some attempted a kick under the belt. After being rewind, he attempted a kick to Gildarts' face, but he was beaten quickly. At the end of the training session, Izuku was on the ground battered while Gildarts stood unfazed, although if anyone looked closely, Gildarts had a little scratches, but he still didn't move from his place. Izuku was panting and said, "This is extremely tiring." Gildarts said, "Good job, kid, you managed to scratch, not bad for someone who just started to learn." Izuku smiled, although he wanted quick results. Gildarts sighed and said, "You don't need to rush, kid. Take your time so you don't end up regretting it. Besides, you improved quickly, not many can even scratch me. Izuku smiled, feeling satisfied that he was one of exception, and said, I will work hard, Uncle Gildarts. Gildarts then smiled and said, good. Now then, I will teach you the final thing before you wake up, and that is how to use your magic to intimidate your opponent. Izuku smiled as he is excited to use this, and Gildarts said, now then, similar to OFA concept, I want you to search inside you for your magic source and bring it out. Izuku then did that but had hard time maintaining it, but at the end he managed to bring it out, managing to do it, impressing Gildarts with the amount of magic Izuku possess. Gildarts said, now then, I want you to keep the magic power you release to a minimum and increase it if you find your enemies not intimidated, which is high unlikely since your magic pool is quite intimidating. Izuku nodded with a smile and said, that will be useful to end fights without lifting a finger, which will lower the causality. Gildarts smirked and said, good. Now then, you should be waking up any minute now. Izuku nodded and said, thank you for the help, uncle. Gildarts smiled and said, stay strong, kid. Izuku nodded before he disappeared. Izuku paused. I woke up this morning from Gildarts' beating and found that the others were already awake. Momo then said, took you long enough. Kendo then said, we tried to wake you up but you were fast asleep. I laughed sheepishly and said, sorry. I then stood up but found myself falling to the ground with all my body aching, and I said, damn it, Uncle Gildarts, you should have warned me about this. Everyone rushed towards me with Shoto saying, Izuku, you okay, man? I then said, you see, I was training the whole night with the second user and that guy trashed me around. Everyone was shocked with Uraraka saying, was he really that strong? I then said the best thing I accomplished was scratching his face, but so far he didn't even budge from his place. Momo then said, if he was that strong, how come he couldn't defeat AFO? I then said, he said AFO was more stronger back then, not to mention he had strong allies at the time who rivals that of the Paranormal Liberation Front, so they tired him out before they finished him. Shoto then said, did you at least learn something besides being thrashed around? I then said, he taught me how to fight like him, how to use his magic and history about AFO before his injuries. They nodded before Itsuka said, here, let me help you. She then put one of my arm around her shoulder and said, now let's go, your mother will be worried about you. Izuku sighed and said, she is already worried. We then went outside to see mom cooking and smiled towards us, but got extremely worried when she saw me unable to walk properly with her rushing at a speed I could only dream of, and started patting me from head to toe and said, my baby, are you okay? What happened to you? Did someone hurt you? Tell me so I can make them pay for hurting my baby. Izuku laughed sheepishly and said, don't worry mom, I slipped on the bathtub so my muscle is a little sore. The others looked at me weirdly with Inko sighing in relief and said, please be careful Izuku, you know my heart can't take that much scare. Izuku hugged Inko and said, don't worry mom, I will be more careful now. By now the four understood why I lied, and we all sat down together on the table and ate together. We laughed and we were quite happy, with mom being the happiest out of us, seeing that I am making friends and have girlfriend. I really do hope that will encourage her to take care of her health. We are now walking outside of the house after we took shower and prepared ourselves, and found ourselves in front of Bakugo house. I knocked on the door to be met with Auntie Mitsuki, who when she saw me was quite surprised and said, Izuku, is that you? How you've grown. I then said, thank you Auntie Mitsuki, it has been quite a while since we met each other. I want to know if Kachan is inside. Mitsuki said, oh, the brat already left to Ua. I sighed and said, thank you Auntie Mitsuki. Mitsuki smiled and said, no problem Izuku, just be sure to pay a visit. I nodded with a smile and walked towards the group and said, Kachan already left to Ua. Itsuka then said, isn't he going to stop that rebellious act already? He is 19 years old. I then said he doesn't want to show to Auntie Mitsuki that he cares or have friends, since back then he treated people as extras. Okako said, I was doubting how he managed to get into UA, although he was extremely helpful in our timeline. I then said, we have Aldera to blame for grooming to become prideful. If he learned humility much more earlier he would have turned out different. Shoto then said, although I hate what he did to you, I don't have much right into that matter, since I was also groomed to hate father and would have probably ended as big brother to you. Shoto say sadly. Izuku patted his back along with Okako and I said, don't worry about what happened Shoto, maybe here we could avoid his charges of being too extreme. Shoto looked hopeful and said, you are right, I do hope he realized that he is taking things too far. We walked towards the school and were walking on the hallway. I gave a quick kiss to Itsuka before she headed towards class 1B. We were 5 minutes late, but luckily we had English classes with present Mike, so I knocked on the door before opening, revealing present Mike holding a green book about grammar. He said, "Hey listeners, why are you late?" I then said, "Good morning guys. Sorry I am late, I am afraid I just got lost on the path of life." Everyone sweat drop except for present Mike, who teared up and said, "Don't worry my little listener, I will help you out now, sit down you four." Everyone was shocked at present Mike not noticing the obvious lie, with Iida trying to argue about being late, but he was quickly shut down and we sat down on our seat, but not before being high-fived by Shoto. The classes of English was quite boring to say the least, and it was what you could expect from a high school, although for us it was torture since we already had this classes before. I could even see Katsuki fuming in anger, and I kind of felt bad for present Mike since Katsuki looked like he wanted to murder the poor guy. Present Mike then said, "Now, which of this 4 sentences contains a mistake?" Everyone global thought was so boring. Present Mike, seeing the uninterested look of everyone except Iida, of course said, "Hey everybody. Look alive, grammar rules." It was quite obvious that it was the last sentence because the relative pronouns was wrong. Skipping to the cafeteria, we were met with Lunch Rush. He was a good guy. Even in the war he cooked food for both heroes and civilians and died a hero since our resources were drained thanks to the paranormal Liberation Front taking control over our fields and our shipment. He was heartbroken seeing the tired and hungry faces of the people, and he went out in search of some way to bring resources to cook to everyone, but his body was found later on. It was quite horrifying sight. Whoever did this knew how Lunch Rush was important in boosting the heroes and civilians' energy and self-esteem, even if he wasn't a fighting hero like us. Katsuki, who had lack of respect towards the pro hero before in our years at UA, had more respect for the guy and appreciated the food he cooked. People tend to forget something worth until they lose it. We of course ate not before praising his cooking and making his day far better than before, since we knew how tiring it could be to cook for first, second and third years at UA, not to mention the staff. It was safe to say we became Lunch Rush favorite students since we didn't complain like most students. In the afternoon was our heroic classes. It's where All Might announced his debut as our heroic teacher. We knew there will be changes given that Mineta won't be there, but we didn't know how much. We of course met Shinso, who was sleeping inside in another violet sleeping bag, and we could only roll our eyes as we were quite pleased to see the guy get into the hero course in place of that loser Mineta. I then said, "Good afternoon Shinso, I hope you had a nice lunch." Shinso was quite friendly towards me since I knew about the nature of his quirk and I praised him, so he responded and said, "Yeah, Lunch Rush never failed to amaze me, although I want to sleep more." I nodded my head and said, "Then sleep as much as you want since our next class will be heroic, that's where you will show your skill." Shinso nodded a little happily. We already know that Aizawa-sensei took him as an apprentice since Aizawa saw himself in Shinso someone whose quirk isn't battle-oriented and was judged for it. Everyone by now walked into class with Iida trying to reprimand Shinso for sleeping in class, but we stopped him and said, "Loosen up Iida, the guy is tired, besides Aizawa-sensei do that a lot and nobody tell him anything." Iida tried to argue, but I said he knows when the teacher walks in he will sit down properly. Iida, although not quite happy, agreed and left Shinso, who opened one eye and said thanks. I nodded and said no problem. We all sat down on our seat and I could hear the footsteps of All Might, which made Shinso get out of the sleeping bag and sat properly in the chair. With All Might booming voice was heard, "I am here." Coming through the door like a hero. Just like before, All Might opened the door dramatically. Everyone in the class except us were in awe, with Kaminari saying, "Whoa. I can't believe it's All Might." Hiroshima then said, "So he is a teacher. This year is going to be a totally awesome." Sue then said, "Hey look, is he wearing Silver Age costume?" Ojiro then said, "I am getting goosebumps, it's so retro." All Might then spoke not before walking to the podium in a dramatic way, making us roll our eyes playfully. "Welcome to the most important class at UA High. Think of it as Heroic 101. Here you will learn the basics of being a pro and what it means to fight to the name of good. Let's get into it. Today's lessons will pull no punches." All Might flex not before he brought a card that has the word battle. All Might then continued, "But one of the keys of being a hero is looking good. This were designed for you based on your quirk registration forms and requests you send before school started." Everyone cheered loudly at the prospect of getting to wear their hero costume in action, with All Might finishing with, "Get yourselves suited up and at meeting me at training ground beta." Everyone shouted, "Yes sir." I sigh since my hero costume won't fit me anymore since it was made to fit my former size, but now that I am at the same height as Iida it wasn't possible anymore, but luckily Momo was trying to recreate our old hero costumes and managed to a certain degree and it was quite well. We just have to wait until Melissa finish our hero costumes. If you are wondering about their hero costume you will find it in the prologue. All Might could be seen waiting in front of the entrance of Ground Beta with a smile plaster on his face with everyone walking outside with Katsuki having a version of his hero costume with long sleeves since he made it to counter any ice users and because it helped him sweat a lot. Momo had her assets covered since she didn't want to give the enemy any places to harm her. I had the same hero costume as before but there were shoulder pads and mask to cover my nose. All Might was impressed. This is getting me all ramped up. Shall we start, you bunch of newbies? All Might then spoke. Now that you're ready it's time for combat training. All Might was interrupted by Iida who raised his hand like a robot and said sir. And we were quite annoyed as we really not used to having Iida being stuck up as he was before with Daigoro saying can't believe it's the same kid who told a civilian to get the stick off his ass. Note: I thought it would be quite hilarious if a matured Iida told someone to stop being stuck up. I then said yeah, I need to get used to that version of him. Flashback. It was no secret that some civilians were quite rude towards us and reprimanded us for the slightest mistake. I could remember Iida walking towards the civilian before he headbutted him to the ground. That was quite shocking to everyone that a hero assaulted a civilian, but Iida left no room for argument. He said dude, take a chill pill and remove that stick up your ass. We are doing whatever we can to fight the enemy and provide resources to ungrateful people like you. If you don't like it here then you could go out and look for it yourself. After all, less people mean more resources for everyone here. The guy was quite including the other civilian as they knew that the heroes are doing everything they can to ensure their safety. But when Iida was alone he was ganged by Zero and Mina who reminded him that he was the same, which made him embarrassed. End of flashback. Iida then said this is the fake city from our entrance exam. Does that mean we will be conducting urban battles again? All Might then said not quite. I am going to move you 2 steps ahead. Most of the villains fight you see on the news take place outside. However, statistically speaking, run-ins with the most dastardly evildoers takes indoors. Think about it: backroom deals, home invasions, secret underground lairs. Truly intelligent criminals stay hidden in the shadows. For this training exercise you will be split into teams of good guys and bad guys and fight 2 and 2 indoors battle. Sue then said isn't that a little bit advanced? All Might then said the best training is what you get on the battlefield, but remember you can't just punch a robot. This time you are dealing with actual people now. Iida then asked will you be splitting us based on chance or comparative skills? All Might then answered I was planning on actually having a random team made up by picking lots, but due to the quirk assignment test we wanted to prevent having people like young Midoriya and young Bakugo duking it out with each other due to their raw power they demonstrated. Katsuki grunted in frustration as he wanted the chance to duke it out with Izuku, but he knew that he can't go max power or he will take down the entire building down and won't get the chance to have fun fighting Midoriya. Suyu then said that is quite logical. Kaminari then shuddered and said I can't imagine those 2 monsters duking it out with each other. Katsuki was enraged at being called monster and wanted to beat the living shit out of him but restrained himself, although he was releasing bloodlust at Kaminari, making him shake in fear and piss his pants. All Might was quite surprised with the bloodlust but ignored it and pulled a paper before he opened it and said listen up. The situation is this: the villains have hidden a nuclear missile somewhere in their hideout. The heroes must try to foil their plan. To do that the good guys either has to capture the evildoer or recover the weapon. Likewise the bad guys succeed if they protect their payload or capture the heroes. All Might then continued time's limited and I am going to be announcing the teams right now, so pay close attention newbies. Hitoshi Shinso and Okako Uraraka, Team A vs Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Iida, Team D. Shoto Todoroki and Mezzo Shoji, Team B vs Mashirao Ojiro and Toru Hagakure, Team I. Fumikage Tokiyami and Suyu Asui, Team H vs Ejiro Kirishima and Honta Siro, Team J. Denki Kaminari and Kyoka Jiro, Team G vs Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya, Team C. Yuga Aoyama and Mina Ishido, Team E vs Rikido Sato and Koji Koda, Team F. All Might then said now it's time for Team A versus Team D. Now Team D head inside the building and prepare the nuclear missile. I will be informing the hero team when to get inside. I then told both team good luck before I left to the monitor room where we watched Bakugo walk inside along with Iida. Momo then says do you think he will work this time with Iida? I then whispered he will have to work with him, he knows what Shinso is capable of, not to mention Uraraka is a capable hero herself. Momo nodded her head in agreement as we watched All Might gave the heroes the signal to enter the building. We could hear the conversation between Bakugo and Iida, with Katsuki giving Iida all information needed, although Iida wanted to get into the role of villainy, which Katsuki told him it was a waste of time and would only distract himself from the objective. Similar things went with Uraraka and Shinso. The two teams has met each other, with Iida falling into the brainwashing technique since he was already monologuing, leaving Bakugo to fight 1v2, but he was not the number 2 hero. For no reason he managed to take down Shinso quickly since he was inexperienced, but his fight with Uraraka was quite difficult since she was agile and good at martial arts, but in the end Katsuki managed to exploit her opening and pinned her in the ground before he rolled the tape around her, making the villain team win this exercise. Everyone in the observation room were quite impressed with Uraraka fighting toe-to-toe with Bakugo for long. The second fight was Shoto Todoroki and Mezzo Shoji vs Mashirao Ojiro and Toru Hagakure. Similar to before, Shoto froze this time the ground and not the building and controlled it to that it only take the surrounding area and not touch the bomb, as to not set it off, since that was a mistake he pulled last time. He of course touched the bomb, giving him the win. The third fight ended in favor of Tokiyami and Tsuyu because both of them were able to work well together, with Tsu calm demeanor under tough situation and Tokiyami dark shadow. They managed to overpower Kirishima and trick Zero, giving them the win. Izuku fight. The fourth fight was Denki Kaminari and Kyoka Jiro versus me and Momo, so we headed towards the building and got inside. We put the bomb on the highest floor of the building, with me asking, "So, Momo, how do you want this match to go? I could outright intimidate them, or we have them come here and fight them together." Momo pondered for a second and said, "It's best you intimidate them. We do know that smart villains have like a system of where you fight till you reach the top, and beside we need to fit our role as a villain." I nodded and said, "Hey Momo, can you create me insulin sheet? Not that I needed, but it will give us advantage against Kaminari." Momo nodded before she created from her arm an insulin cape that I put on myself and headed towards the heroes. Kaminari and Jiro were seen getting inside the building, with Kaminari being a little afraid, but he can't be afraid in front of his crush, so he said, "I will defeat the two easily, just a little shock treatment and that will be enough to beat them." Jiro groaned as she was going to respond, but I was standing in front of them with the most intimidating look and said, "Is that so, heroes? Let's give it a test, shall we?" Both of them jumped in fear as they didn't expect to see their enemy standing in front of them, since Jiro was supposed to know my location, but for me I had experience and managed to hold my breath. Jiro said, "How? I didn't even hear you coming." Izuku laughed evilly and said, "I know all about you, hero, and how you can hear someone just by their heartbeat, but I managed to hold my breath far longer, but I am quite intrigued to see if the little shock treatment you talked about would be enough to take me down. Just a piece of information, heroes do know I have insulin cape made by my comrade that can withstand 2 million volt of electricity, so what are you gonna do, heroes? Surrender to me or fight for a death battle?" Both Jiro and Kaminari backed up. We could see at the monitor room everyone shocked, including All Might, who was quite impressed with Izuku act and plan. Tsuyu then said he had it all well planned from the beginning and his acting skills are top notch. Mina said it's quite terrifying to see him act like this. Kirishima shouted, "So manly." Zero then said, "I don't think the hero team will win." Iida then said, "Although I am quite impressed with Midoriya acting skills, the fight hasn't been determined yet." All Might said, "That's quite right, young Iida, a fight isn't over yet. The heroes are currently on a tight spot unless they have a plan." Everyone then focused back on the fight. We returned to the fight to see Kaminari more intimidated than Jiro, but he knew he can't act like this in front of his crush and decided to act cocky. "Don't worry, villain, we heroes will take you down." I smirked and said, "Cocky are we? Let's see if you can keep this up once I unleash my full power." I then started releasing my magical power at extreme rate that the shockwave was directed towards the two in the building. No, the entire school was shaking as if an earthquake was happening. Both were shaking in fear, with Kaminari pissing his pants before he fainted from the amount of magical power that I released towards him. Jiro was trying to keep herself from fainting and tried to attack with a sonic wave, but just a glare from my part and said, "Is that all you got, heroes? How pathethic didn't you say that you will take me down? Come on and get me, I am standing right here." This managed to scare Jiro beyond belief as she fell on her knees and said, "I surrender. I give up." I then stopped releasing my magic power only to see a shaking Jiro on the floor. I knew this was overboard, but I couldn't hold back on them since they will have to see this kind of stuff in the future. Jiro was terrified and was sweating profusely with All Might's shaking voice appeared on the announcer hero team has surrendered. I then went towards her. She was trying to get away but then I brought my hands towards her and smiled saying a wise choice. I applaud anyone who has the courage to stand up and face their enemy, however the heroes the most courageous are those exceptional few who know when to stand down. Remember Jiro, there is nothing wrong with feeling fear after all. How else we would come to know our own weaknesses? You need to know them in order to become a stronger and gentler person, a necessity for those who want to climb the top. People like All Might know it very well. All Might be smiling all the time but he also feel fear but he doesn't give up. He learned from this experience and he channeled that fear as a motivation to become stronger and improve himself. Jiro stopped shaking and gave a weak smile before she grabbed my hand and I pulled her up. She then said, "You were right. I have a lot to learn yet. Thank you Midoriya for the motivation and for opening my eyes to the truth. I guess I got overconfident of my skills." At the monitor room we could see everyone watching the fight and were disappointed in Kaminari for being cocky with Suyu, then said that's why he is an idiot. Mina said, "I feel bad for Jiro." It comes. The part where Izuku started releasing his magical power and the monitor room including the whole school was experiencing an earthquake that every staff member rushed towards the monitor room and when they saw that the one responsible for the earthquake were impressed and downright terrified since the magical power was felt. Even All Might was terrified and thought, "Young Midoriya, what happened to you? This is more terrifying than even AFO bloodlust." Ectoplasm asked, "How can a first year hold so much power?" Cementos then said, "We should be glad he is in our side." Midnight, although terrified, couldn't help but get wet and rub her leg together with Aizawa saying, "Seriously Midnight, you are getting horny." Dark Shadow was seen popping out of Tokiyami and said, "Listen well, don't mess with that kid. I don't even think that was his full power." This downright terrified everyone. Of course Kaminari fainted and Jiro surrendered with All Might announcing the villain team as the winner but he was shaking. It was then they watched the speech that Izuku told Jiro and Principal Nezu and Aizawa were impressed with the wise words and thought he seems to be talking from experience, not to mention those are those of a war veteran who's seen the world in true ugliness. "What happened to you, problem child Midoriya?" Everyone was cheering loudly at the speech and it boosted the moral of everyone with Kirishima crying manly tears and said, "He's so manly." Zero then said, "Wow, the gap in our power is huge. I guess we need to catch up." Tokiyami said, "Dark Shadow, we will start training harder than before. Midoriya has opened my eyes that we still have room to improve." Dark Shadow said, "I partner." Sato then said, "Handsome people sure know how to give speech." Aoyama then said he was dazzling. Mina and Toru said, "Star eyes, he is so cool." Shinso looked at his hand and thought, he is right, I have a lot of room to improve if I want to become the next Eraserhead. Iida then said, "My classmate, let us train and get stronger together." Everyone said yeah. All Might thought with a smile on his face, proud of his protege, "You were so cool, young Midoriya. Was that your plan all along?" The teacher were smiling and were impressed at how he managed to motivate the entire class with Aizawa giving a shit-eating grin and thought, "I guess this year won't be boring than I thought." Izuku was seen walking towards the monitor room with a passed-out Kaminari on his shoulder and Momo making sure that Jiro was alright. Momo then said, "Did you really have to do that, Zuzu?" Izuku looked at Momo and smiled saying, "I know that they could hear me from the monitor room. I am motivating them so they don't get overconfident and meet their doom." Jiro then said, "So that was your plan all along?" Izuku said, "Yep, and don't worry, that wasn't my full power." Jiro was shocked and said, "Wait. That wasn't your full power? Oh god, I feel bad for those who will fight you." Izuku laughed sheepishly and they found themselves in the monitor room and Izuku was met by the staff and the classmate applauding him with Kirishima saying, "That was so manly. Let's train together sometime." I then said, "I don't mind." Sato, Shoji, Ojiro and Tokiyami said, "We want to be part of the training as well." I then said, "The more the merrier." Aizawa said, "Good job, problem child, you managed to encourage your whole classmate, but you need to hold back, you caused an earthquake to the entire school." Izuku said casually, "I held back." Everyone was wide-eyed with everyone shouting, "That's WAHT you call holding back." Izuku covered his ear and said, "You are gonna cause me go deaf." All Might said, "Good job, young Midoriya. I am proud of the speech you gave. Listen kids, take this to heart, channel your losses into motivation to improve yourself. There is nothing wrong with losing or feeling fear. What's wrong is not learning from your mistake." Everyone shouted yeah. Principal Nezu then said, "I will be taking recording of the fight and show it to class 1B. I hope that encouraged them as well to work hard." Vlad then says yeah. That would be appreciated. Maybe Monoma could learn something from this. Aizawa gave a shit-eating grin and said, you want the recording, then pay up. Everyone's sweat dropped with Vlad grumbles and said how much. Aizawa with a smirk then said that would be 20,000 yen. Vlad shouted what? Aizawa then said pay up. Vlad then searched through his pocket and brought cash. He tried counting it but was snatched from him, and Aizawa counted the money to see it was 20,000 yen and gave a shit-eating grin and said pleasure doing business with you, Vlad. Izuku then said wow, never expected that. Aizawa then said, not losing the shit-eating grin, also Principal Nezu, I expect a raise soon. He then jumped towards his sleeping bag before he crawled out of the monitor room. The final match has went on and Mina Ishido and Yuga Aoyama won against Rikido Sato and Koji Kota. It was finally the end of the day and everyone started going home. Izuku Pav. The second day at UA was over and felt proud for managing to encourage everyone at my class to start taking their training seriously, but now is not the time since we are planning to reveal our identity to Principal Nezu and Aizawa. Well, more like give them their memory. I am confident that they were going to be well since Aizawa has already experienced the loss of his closest friend Oboro Shirakumo. Principal Nezu, since he was an animal with a quirk, he was used as a lab rat, so they were pretty much considered war veteran and will be able to handle the situation far better. We also agreed that Iida should be part of the people to know about our identity, given that having another brain will be quite useful, and we knew when to give his memory since we don't want to be suspicious, because imagine someone having a stick shoved deep in his ass suddenly be quiet and collective, it would be suspicious, so we decided to give him his memory after the USJ since people will write it off as him maturing after seeing the world. Izuku was seen walking, and on both sides were Momo and Kendo. They were a little tense and were wondering how Aizawa-sensei will take the news of having a time traveler. Katsuki was walking in front of everyone with neutral look, not fazed at all. Shoto was standing next Okako, calm although he held pain in his heart. As for Okako, she was tense as both other female as was trying to regulate her breathing. The weight of having to tell someone outside their group about such secret is quite draining. They have finally arrived in front of the principal door. The teacher have already left, with the exception being Aizawa and Nezu, who were speaking about plans for the upcoming USJ trip that will be held tomorrow. Izuku steeled his nerve and knocked on the door. A few minutes later the door was opened to reveal a tired Aizawa, who looked at the group of students and said, problem children, what brings you all here? Shouldn't you be already at home? Izuku said, we would like to speak to you and Principal Nezu about an important matter that you should be made aware of. Aizawa sighed as he opened the door and said, come in. Walking inside the room they were met with Nezu office. He was sitting on his huge chair having his iPad placed on the wooden table, holding his tea and sipping on it. That managed to bring nostalgia on the sixth student. They remember Nezu dying on their hand, and his last request was to drink his last tea, which they did before he died with a smile on his face. It was heartbreaking since Nezu was one of the priority of the Meta Liberation Front because of his high IQ level. Aizawa was seen sitting on one of the couch having his coffee to stay awake. He was also one of the high target of the Meta Liberation Army because he was able to erase their quirk, which would hinder them, and he was at a disadvantage after he had to cut his leg when he was shot by quirk erasure bullet that the Meta Liberation Front have manufactured for people like him who they deem dangerous for their cause. Nezu lifted his head from the table and looked at the guest and said, well, if it isn't the problem children that Aizawa liked to call, what brings you all here? Katsuki had a tick mark although he remained calm. Izuku stepped in with the group remaining 1 feet behind him, which was quite surprising to both Nezu and Aizawa, as they knew that was only done when high officials are walking on the streets. So Nezu and Aizawa has entered analysis mode, as they observed each student that were standing in front of him. Although the three boys were quite good at covering their emotion, a skill Aizawa built over the years after Shirakumo death, but the girls were plain obvious and could see fear, regret, pain, something that only war veteran possess, and they were definitely on high alert since some of this children like Yaoyorozu and Kendo are living quite a nice life. Izuku then took a deep breath and said in a leader mode, we have come to talk about future event that should not be discussed outside of this room because of how dangerous it could be. Could I trust you with that? Principal Nezu and Eraser Head. Both Nezu and Aizawa sat properly since when Izuku called them by their hero name mean it's serious, with Nezu saying, you have my utmost promise that anything that would be discussed here would not be shared to anyone. Nezu then pressed a red button covering the window and activated a sound block allowing them to talk freely. Izuku then said, good, first I need you to have trust in us since I am about to share some memories to you both. Both Nezu and Aizawa looked towards each other and shrugged their shoulder before nodding to Izuku. He then went towards Nezu and Aizawa and placed both his pinky on their forehead, letting OFA to do their job. A few minutes later, both Nezu and Aizawa were panting with the memories that they have received, which is currently trying to rearrange itself to not confuse them, but after another few minutes they stood up and both had disbelief look, with Aizawa walking towards Izuku and the other giving them bone-crushing hug. If anyone were to see Aizawa right now they would be shocked, since Aizawa never showed affection to anyone, but Aizawa was sad not because he died in the war or that he lost both Midnight and Present Mike, that last of his group of friends, but because the kids had to experience something like that. The girls were the one to broke in tears as they hugged their sensei who comforted them, but the boys never shed a tear. They have experienced a lot more than the girls. Nezu was watching the scene as he teared up and remembered how he failed a lot of people despite having a quirk suited for such situation. High spec. His plans failed since they were always one step ahead of him. He wasn't even suspicious of the six when they suddenly came complaining about their clothes not fitting them anymore and how they looked much older, especially Midoriya, who destroyed his arm 2 weeks ago in the entrance exam, but now he have two quirks and have good control over them, and he didn't even suspect it or thought about it too much. Nezu could only ask, how long have you eight been here? Izuku said the day before the start of UA. Nezu nodded his head and stood up before he bowed towards the sixth student and said, I greatly apologize to the sixth of you. If I have planned carefully, none of this could have happened, and I am supposed to be the smartest creature on this planet. Shoto was the one to speak and said, it was not your fault, Principal Nezu. They had advantage in both power and resources, not to mention we lacked in number of heroes after a lot of them ran with their tails behind their back. Momo then said, not to mention you fought as well, sir, despite the fact we recommended to not fight, but you fought to at least compensate the lack of heroes that we were suffering. Katsuki then said, you might be an animal with a quirk who was mistreated, but you were a better hero than all those wannabes heroes. You fought to the end and fought for our rights after the commission wanted to send us to the battlefield before we graduated from UA. Izuku nodded and said, you are one of the heroes that made a lot of change in the war. You might not realize this, but the war could have ended differently without your help, so we are grateful. That is why both you and Aizawa sensei were our top priority in revealing our identity, so we can prevent this madness. We have already created a plan which should have been included as a part of the memory. Aizawa then said, your intellects have grown a lot, the plan is quite good. Nezu nodded after he got seated and said, I already have dirt on the commission, and we could have you do a licensing exam in place of the sports festival, which would be private, but they will likely make it harder on the six of you. Are you willing to take it? Katsuki scoffs and said, there are reasons why we are in top 5 chart, not to mention Deku here is getting stronger, especially with that overpowered quirk he awakened at the quirk apprehension test. Nezu nodded with a smirk and said, very well, we will be contacting about the results tomorrow. Aizawa then said, now that is handled, I want to know how are you faring with the situation. Izuku gave a smirk and said, although it's painful to see you loved ones alive again, but the fun part is pranking, especially yesterday prank on Endeavor. Izuku then brought his phone to project the prank call on Endeavor, and Nezu and Aizawa couldn't help but laugh as they remembered their good old Endeavor. They talked a bit more and decided on who to include in their group in the future, with Iida being approved of being part of the group. They also had talk about old thing and even laughed at Mineta, with Aizawa saying, I am glad I expelled him. To be honest, part of me wanted to find him and choke him with my scarf, but since he is empty of charges here I can't do anything to him. They laughed and even made comment about the new improved Iida, who was advising others to not be stuck, which managed to make Aizawa laugh and gave his shit-eating grin, actually enjoying for the first time. Although both Nezu and Aizawa won't be the same anymore, as they have been given a huge burden on their shoulder that they intend to carry to ease on their student burden. After all, no matter how high the children are in the hero chart, they are still their student, whether former or not. The six walked out of the office clearly at ease and happy with how things went, and that they have two others they could trust with their life in on their secret, and that they should be able to stop the war from ever beginning. No one pav. Yesterday Izuku and his gang have confessed to both Principal Nezu and Aizawa about their identity and the fate of the world. They managed to find a compromise, which was have Kami Utsushimi transferred to UA. Melissa Shield will be invited to become a support student, and that they will leave everything play like it did to not make the league more aware of them and unpredictable. Walking through the UA gate, Izuku was met with a horde of paparazzi who wanted to get scope on how the symbol of Peace All Might is like, as the female reporter shoved her microphone on Izuku's face. Female reporter asked, hey you, can you tell us what it's like to work so closely with All Might? Izuku then ponder for a minute trying to figure words that doesn't give too much details nor too low to not be satisfying, so he smirked as he got the brilliant idea, since even in his world he detested the media, since just like Aizawa-sensei said, they are like cockroach. Izuku. He inspire us to work hard and broke through our limit just like our school motto. Izuku then walked away as the female reporter was shocked, as this wasn't what she wanted to hear at all. She wanted something like All Might favorite food, what he wears, which is too much in Izuku's opinion. Toru was seen walking behind them as the female reporter shoved the mic towards the poor floating girl. Female reporter. Are you one of All Might's students? Tell us what is the symbol of peace in person. Toru, although excited at having the camera recording her, she was embarrassed as she wasn't expecting a question about All Might and knew that they had signed regulation that doesn't allow them to speak about any information concerning UA except in school ground. Toru flex her muscle. What's he like? Well, he is super muscly, yeah. The female reporter was disappointed with Toru rushing inside the UA door, giving a sigh of relief as the female reporter tried asking her more like assaulting another student, but it was a wrong move as the one they had asked him the question was Tenya Iida. Oh boy, they are in for a lecture. Female reporter. How is he faring as a teacher? What are you learning? Iida then started his speech. His leadership and wisdom remind me on a daily basis that I attend the world's most prestigious educational institution. Of course, he's the personification of honor and integrity that one would expect, but he is also not afraid to show his students the more humorous side. It's truly a unique opportunity to be under the direct tutelage of the pro we all admired. By now the female reporter was going crazy along with the other reporter and cameraman, as they just wanted something interesting and not some crazy long speech. They tried for the last time with a smile on their faces with a look of hope as they desperately shoved the mic onto Aizawa, aka Eraserhead, who give a tiny smirk, since at time like this that he enjoy the desperate look of the media, as he knew how desperate they are when it comes to scope. Female reporter. Please sir, can you give All Might first? Also you look like a mess, what's your deal? Aizawa. All Might is not on campus today, now get out of here, you disturbed my students enough already. Some of the camera staff were getting away from Aizawa because of his look that screamed, I haven't slept for ages, which is true, but this time was not because his usual antic, but because learning the truth yesterday weighted down on him, and the death of most of his students and comrades made him feel like a failure. You'll also like. Female reporter. But my viewers want to know how he is adjusting his life as a teacher. Aizawa walked away clearly unfazed by the riot and the demands of those cockroaches as he smirked. The female reporter, getting infuriated for not getting to have interview with All Might, decided to step inside the gate. Female reporter. All right, if you won't bring All Might out, I will get him. Cameraman. No, hold on. The entrance of UA shut down with metal, not allowing anybody to enter, although the female reporter almost got crushed by the door when she tried stepping inside. She, of course, like any normal person, screamed in terror as she jumped back. Cameraman. Don't you know about the school defenses? This gate is the UA barrier. The female reporter looked at the cameraman in shock, clearly irritated that she almost got squashed a few moments ago because of the barrier. Female reporter. Defenses. It practically killed me. The cameraman pointed to the 3 red light about the gate. Cameraman. Yeah. Well, it's designed to stop anyone who doesn't have a student ID or special pass from entering the campus. Guess it works. Apparently there are security sensors like this all over the place. Female reporter huffs. Keeping the public out. This school thinks it's untouchable. The least they can do is grant me one interview. Cameraman. I know, right? We've been here for 2 days and I don't have a single comment on the record yet. The reporters were seen agreeing with each other, clearly annoyed that UA didn't even give them any interview with All Might, but they failed to notice the presence of yours truly Shigaraki Tamura, who stood wearing black shirt and black pant as he looked at the UA gate from far away. 1A class. Aizawa. Decent work on yesterday on combat training, you guys. I saw the video feeds and went over each of your team's result. Kaminari. Kaminari looked at Aizawa, clearly afraid since yesterday match was humiliating, especially in front of his crush. He knew it was his fault for underestimating Izuku's abilities and felt ashamed that just a killer intent was enough to put him out of commission, while Jiro lasted much longer than him. Aizawa. You have potential, but don't waste it on trying to pick chicks. I am sure you saw the video feeds yesterday when you woke up, and this goes for everyone in this class. Being afraid doesn't mean you are a loser or weak, it means you are recognizing your own weakness. You are weak when you know your weakness, but don't change it. Kaminari did have to admit the speech that Izuku gave to Jiro and the other was motivating as he realized he was taking the hero course as a walk through the park and haven't trained his quirk for years, thinking that because he have electricity quirk then he is the shit, so he looked at Aizawa sensei as he nodded his head. Kaminari. Yes sir, in this match I was quite arrogant and overconfident over my quirk that I didn't realize that I was dragging my teammate down. I saw that the hero course was going to be easy, more of a walk through the park, but I failed to realize that I would be dead in a matter of seconds if it were to be a real battle, so I appreciate Midoriya for opening my eyes. Aizawa clearly satisfied with the answer and hoped that his students' progress will be quite far than last time and could be able to handle themselves. Izuku on the other hand smirked. Izuku. It take a big man to admit that he is wrong. Just know I full-heartedly support anyone who want to become strong, and just like yesterday I am planning to train group of boys in the class in 1B that if they agreed to improve and get stronger together. After Kaminari smiled, clearly happy with the offer of training, Aizawa gave a smirk which was noticed by Izuku group as they knew he enjoyed torturing his students all over again. Aizawa. Let's get down to business. Our first task will decide your future. You all need to pick a class representative. Everyone tensed at first when Aizawa mentioned, decide your future, as everyone global thought was, not another quirk test, but when just said, pick a class representative, the class exploded into cheers. Everyone thought, oh good. Just normal school stuff. Kirishima throw his hand up and shout, pick me guys, I wanna be class representative. Kaminari. I will take it. Jiro. Yeah, you are gonna need me. Aoyama. Someone with style. Mina throw her hands up. Totally the right pick. The class was in chaos as everyone was shouting to get chosen for the position, although Izuku group remained silent, enjoying the good old days where they were just innocent fresh high school kids. The girls were clearly emotional about the whole situation as they felt like the war was just a nightmare, but they knew that it was true and they will have to carry this burden. They were interrupted of their thought as Iida made his entrance by shouting. Iida. Silence everyone please. The class representative's duties is to lead others, that's not just anyone can do, you must first have the trust of every student in the classroom, therefore the most logical way to fill this position is democracy. We will hold an election to choose our leader. Iida then raised his hand higher as it started to shake because of how desperate he want to get chosen. Everyone thought, it's pretty obvious you want us to go through you. Kaminari. Is this really the best idea? Sue. We've only known each other a few days, how do we know who we can trust? Kirishima. Besides, everyone will just vote for themselves. Iida. Most people will, but that means whoever does receive multiple votes must truly be the most suitable person for the job. It's the best way, right sir? He looks towards Aizawa as he see him sleeping with everyone sweat dropping at their teacher antics. Iida then coughs. Due to Aizawa sensei sleeping, we will go through my plan. Time skip to the result of vote. Election result. Izuku Midoriya 6. Momo Yaoyorozu 4. Tenya Iida 0. Izuku sighs as he knew he will get chosen regardless if he demonstrated or didn't demonstrate his quirk. Iida could be seen gripping his hand and biting his lips in frustration. Iida. 0 votes. I feared this might happen, but I can't argue with the system I chose. Sato. While you do his best to vote for yourself, right, what were you trying to prove here, Midoriya? Both Izuku and Momo walked in hands together, making both Mina and Toru to squeal as they took pictures, while Iida was being himself, shouting no PDA in school, seriously, that guy need to chill. Aizawa then stood up, not even unzipping the sleeping bag, and said in a bored tone, since he expected the outcome and knew that we can opt Midoriya as no matter what loved by the students. Aizawa. Alright, the class representative is Midoriya and his deputy is Yaoyorozu. Izuku and Momo bows their head and thank their classmate. Sue. This might not be so bad. Kirishima. Yeah, Midoriya is logical, after all he is strong and smart. Cafeteria. Izuku was seen seated with his group of people as they talked about normal stuff and the breach that was supposed to happen. Uraraka. I guess things haven't changed since last time, it kind of feel nice to have a full cafeteria with a smile. Itsuka sigh. Yeah, it was heartbreaking to see all those children and women bandaged or crying over lack of food. Izuku sigh. Let's not talk about it since it only make us gloomy. How about we talk about how great it is to have Kami and Melissa transferring to UA pretty soon. Bakugo, hearing Kami name, smirk widely as he imagined dragging her to a love hotel only to fill the quiet street with her moan. Shoto. Done fantasizing bro. Bakugo got a tick mark. What the hell half and half, can't you see that I am thinking of something besides you get to tap round cheeks ass every day? Shoto smirk. Didn't take you as the jealous type Katsuki. Shoto then brought Uraraka to a passionate kiss as he grabbed her thighs and rubbed it, making Katsuki explode in anger. The other were watching amused as Izuku wrapped his arms around Momo and Itsuka. Izuku with fake tears. How sad Kachan you can get to have fun with your beloved Kami. Izuku then brought both Momo and Itsuka into a kiss, making the already enraged Bakugo bang his head on the table before he took off, flipped the bird and stormed off. Katsuki. Go to hell you extras. Izuku and Shoto smirked in victory as they give each other high five, clearly enjoying infuriating Bakugo, but that also made them the center of attention as almost everyone stopped eating to watch the teasing and some chuckle, but that ended quickly as the school alarm rang around the whole school. Alarm. Warning, level 3 security breach, all students please evacuate the building in orderly fashion. Hallway. Everyone started running away as Izuku sighed, clearly irritated at the fact he have to go through that again. Everyone started running at the hallway, hitting each other and stomping on each other. Random student 1. Stop shoving so hard. Random female student. What are you doing? You are going to get us trampled. Random student 1. I said stop pushing me. Izuku walked at the hallway, observed the outside to see similar than before the media has breached the school defenses thanks to Shigaraki decay quirk. Izuku was honestly disappointed since in their timeline most of them expected that they will be dealing with no-name criminals, but when faced against a powerful organization like the Paranormal Liberation Front, well, they either died or ran away and just give up on being heroes. Izuku. Shoto, freeze their legs, all of them. Shoto. With pleasure. Shoto proceeded to stomp on the ground, freezing the entire ground, making people legs stuck on the ground as they turned around and some had irritated look. Random student 1. What the hell are you idiots doing? There is a level 3 breach and you are just chilling. Do you want us to die? Izuku was not happy as he used his magic to bring his magic out, which the amount of pressure and the ground shaking terrified everyone. Izuku. Seriously, is that supposed to be you? Students, a bunch of cowards who, when a level 3 breach made them run away and hit each other while the instruction told us to evacuate the building in orderly fashion. Besides, who in their right mind will attack a campus full of pro heroes like All Might? Besides, if any of you bothered to look at the window, you will see it's just those lousy news reporter who want a scope about All Might. And besides, I can tell that you are third year, means you have more experience than us first years, so tell me, why would you run away? I am sure you experience situation like this in your internship and work study. Everyone was quiet as some looked at the window and some fell on the ground relieved, but some had their pride hurt as they knew acted unbefitting of aspiring heroes. Random student 2. I understand, but can't you just be nice about it? You don't need to be smug about lecturing us third year. Izuku. Smug. I am not being smug. Besides, you are a third year, meaning you should be able to take harsh words, since once you graduate from here there will be people who want to demoralize you for their own gain. If you can't take some simple harsh truth, then you will never get stronger and will remain weak. You know what they say, acknowledging your weakness will only make you stronger, but knowing your weakness but refusing to improve, then you will remain where you are. Shoto. Now then, I will be removing the ice on the ground. I don't want you stomping on each other because this will bring shame to a school that raised heroes like All Might and Endeavor and Best Jeanist. Izuku. Also, anyone you hit or injured while you were fighting each other over the exit should be taken to Recovery Girl to get treated before classes start. Just know you have 5 minutes to clean the mess you created. Izuku and Shoto walked away, leaving the speechless crowd while a camera scene moving showing Principal Nezu smirking as he laughed, enjoying the new Izuku and new Todoroki. He could only hope that things will be different than before and people won't have to lose their life unnecessarily, but once they are done with AFO, Shigaraki, Paranormal Liberation Front and the Doctor, then he will clean this school of those who he deem unworthy of staying in his school, as he clearly remembered each person that cowered and ran away or sided with the Paranormal Liberation Front just to not get killed. With Aizawa sigh as he clearly know he will have to deal again with those lousy reporters. Luckily they have called the police in advance, so the moment they trespassed to get All Might they were dragged outside while the female reporter is screaming. Female reporter. Damn it. All you have to do is give us All Might, he's here somewhere. Male reporter. Just give us one good comment on record and we'll leave. Present Mike waved them off, clearly overjoyed to get rid of those vultures. 12:50 p.m. in 1A classroom. Aizawa. Today's training will be a little different. You will have 3 instructors, me, All Might, and another faculty member will be keeping tabs on you. Zero. Sir, what kind of training is this? Aizawa brought a paper that says, Rescue, lazily as he already done this before and it tired him even more. Aizawa. Rescue, you will be dealing with natural disaster, shipwreck stuff like that. Kaminari. Disasters, huh? Sounds like we are in for a big workout. Mina. Totally. Kirishima. Real hero stuff. This is what separates the men for the boys. I am shaking with excitement. Sue. Finally I get to show how good I am in water. Ribbit. Aizawa. Guys, I am not finished yet. What you wearing in this exercise is up to you. I know you are excited about costumes, but keep in mind that you haven't got used to any of them and they might limit your abilities. This special training is an off-campus facility, so we will be taking a bus to get there. That's all. Start getting ready. Everyone stood up as they took their hero costume and went towards the changing room to change into them. Outside we see 1A outside, some sitting on the benches waiting for instruction, as we could see Izuku, Katsuki and Shoto wearing the same design for their hero costume. It was sent by Melissa a day ago, since she was already working on it before they were brought to this timeline. Aizawa gave a smirk as he liked the hero costume of his problem children. Mina. Wow, you 3 have a cool hero costume. Kirishima. They are so manly, both in power and taste in hero costume. Izuku and Todoroki sweat drop and thought, if they only knew what was my first hero costume. Izuku. Now then everyone, please get inside the bus and sit wherever you want as long as it's in order. Iida wanted to object, but Aizawa placed his hand to cover his mouth. Aizawa. Iida, did you forget that Midoriya is the class representative? Now then follow his instruction. Iida sighed as he got on the bus, and when he saw the structure of it inside he sulked in a corner with a depressing aura surrounding him. As the bus took them and started going towards the USJ where their enemy will be waiting for them. No one pav. The trip to the USJ was eventful. Izuku just hoped that All Might took his advice today of not doing hero work, especially Nezu, who played a role in calling All Might for a fake meeting just so he can have him early and attend the USJ. He honestly was enjoying this a lot as he remembered how Nezu had All Might sit through 1 hour and a half to listen to his rant about chimera breeding and how to become a good teacher. It was priceless seeing All Might face. Izuku was interrupted from his train of thought by Sue as she called for him, looking at her. Sue. Midoriya, I always speak my mind, but your quirk, it's similar to All Might. Izuku last time didn't have a cover-up for his quirk due to his shyness, but now he is confident. Izuku. Oh, I am flattered that you think my quirk is similar to All Might, but mine is energy manipulation. Do remember, my quirk is still a mystery even to me, since I hardly had time to develop it due to it manifesting at the entrance exam. Those who knew about Izuku quirk sigh in relief as they are glad Izuku had backup to cover the true nature of his quirk. Sue, shocked. Wow, you only had your quirk for 2 weeks and you are already the strongest student in the class. One dare even say as a whole. Kirishima. I am jealous, man. My quirk isn't flashy as yours are, Bakugo and Todoroki. Izuku. Don't sell yourself short, Kirishima. Your quirk can be both offensive and defensive. A flashy quirk for manly dude like yourself. You can even become an unbreakable defense that protect everyone. Kirishima teared up. Thank you, Midoriya bro. That the manliest thing ever. Izuku then remembered Kirishima and how much he fought in the war. He was a massive help in the war as he would sometimes take hits that most of them won't be able to take. That's why he didn't like how Kirishima was putting himself down, considering that his quirk is awesome. Aizawa was listening on the conversation as he sighed but gave a small smile as he was proud to have raised the next generation of heroes. Aizawa. Hey, we're here, stop messing around. Everyone. Yes sir. Getting out of the bus they were met with the Pro Hero 13 along with All Might, who's standing tall and proud, Izuku and his group, and Aizawa sigh in relief as they were given more chances to fight against the intruders. Izuku walked towards All Might and asked in a whisper. Izuku, whisper, how are you doing today, All Might? I hope you haven't exhausted your 3 hours. All Might, whisper back, don't worry young Midoriya. Nezu called me a few hours for a false meeting just to talk to me about chimera breeding and how to become good teacher. All Might shivered at the awkward conversation he had with the principal. The students seemed to notice the closeness of All Might and Midoriya and were questioning it, but were interrupted by 13 voice. 13. Hello everyone, I have been waiting for you. Everyone except Izuku and his group were in awe at the rescue hero who was known to save a lot of people around the world. 13. I can't wait to show you inside. Everyone except Izuku and his group, this is going to be so awesome. Walking inside the USJ, everyone was in awe at all the disaster ground that was created to train them in every situation. Kirishima. Holy crap, it looks like some kind of amusement park. 13. A shipwreck, a landslide, a fire, a windstorm etc. I created this training facility to prepare you to deal with different types of disasters. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, but you can call it USJ. Everyone thought, just like Universal Studio Japan. Aizawa. Good to have you here, All Might. For a moment I thought you had booked an interview. All Might, sweat drop, I am not that irresponsible. Aizawa. Yes, you are All Might. 13. Excellent. Before we begin, let me just say one thing, well, make it 2, think possibly 3, 4, 5. Everyone. We get it. 13. Listen carefully, I am sure you are aware that I have a powerful quirk, it's called Black Hole. I can use it to suck up anything and turn it into dust, but my quirk can also very easily be used to kill. Some of you also have a power that can be dangerous in our superhuman society. All quirks are certified and sternly regulated, so we often overlook how unsafe it can actually be. Please don't forget that if you lose focus or make the wrong move, your powers can be deadly even if you are trying to virtuous like rescue someone. Thanks to Aizawa fitness test, you have a solid idea of your quirk's potential, and because of All Might combat training you likely experienced how dangerous your powers can be when used against other people. Carry those lessons to this class. Today you are going to learn how to use your quirks to save people lives. You won't be using your powers to attack enemies or each other only to happen. After all, that's what being a hero is all about, ensuring the safety of others. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening. Izuku thought, I forgot how cool 13 is. Such a shame she got killed quickly. It was because of her that most causalities was kept to a minimum, both civilian and hero side. Everyone applauded for 13 amazing pep talk as they cheered, while All Might had a smile on his face, applauding as well as he was inspired by his colleague and reminded him of why he became the symbol of peace to save people. Izuku and his friends took guard along with Aizawa, confusing everyone as static started appearing around the dome and a portal opened at the fountain. A hand was seen coming out with a red eye, creeping out with a hand on the face of person that was Shigaraki Tamura. Izuku, seeing him once more, made his angel boil along with Bakugo and Shoto, but just a look from Aizawa made them calm down as they realized that they shouldn't act on anger, although Aizawa wasn't faring any better and wanted to go down there to choke Shigaraki with his scarf and torture him. All Might, when seeing the villain's face, dropped to anger as a villain just invaded the school. He could only thank God that he have his 3 hours. Aizawa. This is a villain attack. Midoriya, Todoroki, Bakugo, come with me, we will be fighting the villain. All Might. No, they won't be fighting, they are students. Aizawa. You saw what they are capable of, All Might, and you still doubt them. I am their teacher and I trust them. I wouldn't send a student to their death if I am not confident in them. 13 You know what to do, protect the student. Also led Uraraka, Yaoyorozu to help you, they are capable students. Kirishima tried stepping in to help, but he was pulled by Momo, who gave him a look that tell him stay back as he gulped and did his order. Uraraka on the other hand placed her hand on Iida, making him float as she pushed to the door, crashing into it. Izuku. Run to Ua and inform them that the USJ is under attack. This is order from your class president. Iida knew not to argue as he saw the glare from Izuku and Aizawa that told him, don't disobey me, so he did what he was told and ran towards the main building of Ua. Villain side. Kurogiri. It seems our target is here, but there is a student who was able to escape. Shigaraki, smirk, well, no matter, it will take him 15 minutes at most and 15 minutes back, making it 30 minutes, which is enough for us to eliminate the symbol of peace. All Might. Kurogiri. Should we separate the students? Shigaraki. No need, we need to focus on tiring him out like planned before we let our precious Nomu take care of him. Shigaraki then pat the Nomu head like as if he is treating it as his pet dog before give a grin as he looked at his men. Shigaraki. Go kill the symbol of peace. All Might. Thugs. Yeah, kill All Might. Hero side. All Might was surprised the attack on the USJ was because they wanted to kill him. Don't they know they are going against the symbol of peace? What do they hope to accomplish? Izuku, serious tone. All Might, those thugs don't look like much of a threat. The only one I see as a threat is the bird thing next to the blue hair kid. Izuku made sure not to call the villain by their names as it will only make him suspicious at how he knows the villain's identity. All Might looked at Izuku before he nodded. He could feel the power from the Nomu as it presence dwarfed those around him. Aizawa. You know what to do, you three. Izuku, Bakugo, Todoroki. Yes sir. Aizawa along with Izuku, Bakugo and Todoroki jumped from the staircase as Izuku has activated full cowling 30% while Bakugo used his explosion to propel himself to the ground while Todoroki used his ice side to gain speed. Villain 1. Shooting squad, take your aim. Villain 2. Shouldn't All Might be our target? Who is this homeless guy? Aizawa got a tick mark at being called homeless guy. This is something he doesn't tolerate. Villain 3. Don't recognize him, but if he think he can take us easily, he's dead. Let's take him down. The three villains attempted to shoot Aizawa, but he erased their quirk as he wrapped his capture weapon around them, pulling them together, making them hit each other head in the air, which knocked them out. Aizawa standing up, he was surrounded by villains. Some of them were shocked, but one of the villains seemed to recognize him. Villains 4. Idiots, that's Eraserhead, a pro. He can cancel your quirk just by looking at you. A cocky villain rushed towards Aizawa as he brought his fist back, attempted a punch. Villain 5. Cancellation. Bet you can't erase the quirk of someone like me, can't you? Aizawa smirked. Yeah, you right. But a villain like you is only dangerous if you can reach me. Good thing I think it measures to make sure it doesn't happen. As Aizawa dodged his punch before he punched him the villain in the face, sending him flying before he wrapped his capture weapon around his leg before pulling him towards him. Another villain attempted to punch Eraserhead from the back but dodged the attack by bending his back before kicking the villain in the face and pulled the first villain in his capture weapon to hit three villains at once. Aizawa. Now which one of you gutter punks is next? Shigaraki. There he goes trying to intimidate us. He is strong, and since he is hiding behind those googles you can't tell whose quirk he is erasing. He is making it hard for us to work together or rely on each other. Power. How annoying. The worst thing about dealing with pros is when they live up to all their hype. Aizawa then rushed towards a female villain, kicking her in the face, sending her on the floor before while at the same time wrapping his capture weapon around another villain by his neck as he found enjoyment in it as it relieved him from the stress of the war. He then proceeded to kick the villain that he wrapped his capture gear around, knocking him out. With Izuku. Daigoro, 5th user, let's go baby, kick those bastards' ass. Izuku smirked as he summoned Black Whip as the thugs were getting cocky. Villain 1. A child. How arrogant of him to come to fight us. Villain 2. Let's show him what happened when he tried to play a hero. Villain 3. How about you go to your mommy, kid? Female villain. He's cute. I think I will have you. Izuku smirked. Sorry creepy women, but I already have a girlfriend, but don't worry, I will leave you a souvenir, and that is my foot imprinted on your face. The female villain enraged rushed towards Izuku as he launched Black Whip, grabbing her by the leg before he pulled him towards her, planting his feet on her face, breaking few teeth along with a broken nose as he wrapped Black Whip once more around her leg and launched her towards a group of villain, knocking them over at how strong he threw her towards them. Izuku. Strike. Izuku sensed an attack behind his back. Thanks to danger sense as using full cowl he dodged the attack before appeared suddenly in front of the villains, shocking them before punching a villain to the face, sending him flying towards the staircase while kicking the other one in the gut, and then looked at the big guy who had arrogant face. Izuku. I don't like that look of yours, let me help you. Izuku then increased his percentage of OFA before he gave a shit-eating grin, and everyone in the vicinity heard an earth-shattering scream as Izuku pretty much kicked the guy in his dick. Every male grabbed their manhood in fear as they looked towards Izuku, who still maintained his shit-eating grin. Random villain. Oh hell nah. I ain't fighting that demon child. Random villain 2. I am out of here, I still have to see my baby mama. The 6th user was laughing hysterically inside Izuku as he remembered the good old days when he was known in the police force as the Balls Crusher. He did this a lot to people who called him shorty. He even done it to AFO. That's why AFO was adamant to kill the guy. Aizawa, who saw Izuku kicking a villain in the dick, had the biggest shit-eating grin he could muster as Izuku had become more and more his favorite student. All Might flinches when he saw his protege kicking someone in the dick, although he was amused to say the least. Aizawa. Excellent problem child, 10 extra point in your next exam just for the kick. Izuku, smile, thanks Eraserhead. With the students. The students were watching the fight between Aizawa and the villain and were amazed that they get to have a front row seat to their teacher kicking ass. 13. Be careful kids and watch how your teacher fight. This might be a chance for you to learn something. Everyone. Yes ma'am. It came where they watched Izuku fight the villains like a pro, and 13 was impressed, including the students except for Momo and Uraraka, who know him better than anyone. It came the part where Izuku kicked a villain in the dick and all the male in the class held their family jewel. Tokiyami turned his head away, brutal yet effective technique, revelry in the dark. Zero. Remind me not to fight Midoriya. Sato. Is it bad that I am starting to feel bad for the guy? 13. Don't worry kid, you are not the only one who think that. They then heard Aizawa telling Izuku that he will be getting 10 extra points and they were shocked and in disbelief. 13. Of course he would enjoy this. Back with Izuku. Izuku mutter, this is for you first user. The first user watched in anticipation to see what the ninth user is planning and he feels that this will be good. The other user watched as well and they already took a liking to Izuku a long time ago as he know how to make it entertaining. Izuku then launched towards a group of villain, kicking and punching them. He came face to face with an arrogant villain who had some sort of minor gigantification, but when you have literally the strongest quirk in the world he doesn't mean shit as Izuku punches him to the floor, making him fall back first to the floor. Izuku gave a shit-eating grin as the villain could only shudder in fear as Izuku increased OFA percentage on his feet as he started kicking the villain kneecap, destroying both of them as the villain of course screamed in agony. Shigaraki pale, what the hell is this kid, is he a sadist? The first user along with the second user laughed a lot as the first user, despite his innocent appearance and wise words, he also had a reputation in the police force as the kneecap breaker, and even AFO knew not to mess with him even if he was frail. Random villain. For fuck's sake, it was bad enough that he liked punching people in the dick, but breaking people kneecap, hell nah. Izuku didn't let anyone escape as the screams of villains and bones broken was heard, even to the point it reached Principal Nezu, who was sipping tea, as he gave a wild grin. Nezu. It seems Midoriya is enjoying himself. Ha. All Might shudder, young Midoriya, when did you become so terrifying? Aizawa shit-eating grin, 10 extra points problem child, keep it going. The fight against the villain continued as Todoroki had frozen the villain, not feeling the need to waste his energy on them. Bakugo on the other hand was exploding villain more preferably in the face, as he liked to leave some souvenirs on the face where when someone see them they say, ah, they were fighting Bakugo. With Shigaraki. Shigaraki irritated, damn it, we were supposed to tire All Might not having them beaten by some damn student and an underground hero. Kurogiri. There is 10 minutes left Shigaraki before the backup arrives, we need to send the Nomu. Shigaraki, who was seen scratching his neck furiously, calmed down before regaining his smirk as he looked at his pet. Shigaraki, smirk, I almost forgot about you my pet, now go kill All Might. The Nomu then looked towards the symbol of peace All Might, who just finished taking down a lot of villains himself, and rushed towards him. All Might responded by doing the same thing as they both clashed fists which nullified each other. Luckily All Might was in top condition to fight as he haven't exhausted his 3 hours. Izuku knew that he already marketed himself along with Shoto and Katsuki since they defeated villains by themselves, but then again they were some low-level thug who had no experience using their quirk, so he decided to stay away from All Might against the Nomu and only interfere to make sure to avoid him having All Might on a hold. All Might. California Smash. Crossing his arm he attempted an attack on the Nomu, but the attack didn't harm him in the slightest. Shigaraki confidently, that's because Nomu here has shock absorption. All Might. The only way you're going to hurt him is to slowly gauge his flesh. Of course I don't think he will sit back and let you do that. You finally met your match. All Might. Thanks for telling me how to beat him. All Might then went behind the Nomu back as he gave a suplex to the Nomu, making the ground to shatter underneath him. Izuku, who was watching, knew the outcome as he gave a look to Shoto, who nodded his head understanding. The dust settled, revealing All Might inside Kurogiri portal with the Nomu squeezing onto All Might weak spot. All Might thought, crap. That monster find my weak spot. But before the Nomu can squeeze All Might weak spot even more, Shoto froze the Nomu to his hand, making it easier for All Might to free himself and jump away as he rubbed his wound slightly. All Might. Thank you young Todoroki. Izuku. We might not engage that thing in battle, but that doesn't mean we won't be supporting All Might from afar. Now All Might show that thing what it means to go beyond plus ultra. All Might smiled proudly at his protege as he gave a menacing look towards the Nomu. All Might. You are right, young Midoriya. Shigaraki was scratching his neck furiously as he kept cursing the children a lot. Shigaraki. I hate this brat. Nomu, kill the brat with green hair. The Nomu rushed towards Izuku at blinding speed. All Might eye widened in fear as he tried rushing towards Izuku, but he ended falling on his knee as his injuries was painful for him, but Izuku wasn't fazed as he gave a smirk to the Nomu. All Might. Young Midoriya, watch out. Izuku. So you wanna go tango? Fine, then I will show you that this Nomu is weak. Izuku then cocked his left hand as the Nomu appeared in front of him, attempting a punch on Izuku, but Izuku was faster than him as his hand started glowing white before he punched the Nomu. Izuku. Purifying truth. Absolute heaven. At 150 seconds. The Nomu was then engulfed in intense heat that put even Endeavor Flame to shame. The Nomu screeched around the USJ before it turned to dust as its brain was destroyed, making the quirk get destroyed. Everyone watch in awe as the Nomu, who was going toe-to-toe with All Might just a few minutes ago, was easily beaten by a student no less. Shigaraki, furious cheater. The Nomu was supposed to be on par with All Might, not beaten by a brat. Izuku. Well, your mistake, man-child, is that the Nomu weakness is its brain, not to mention a bioengineered Nomu can't withstand fire as its cell will be burned easily, so you know what they say, it's game over for you. Shigaraki. Kurogiri, get us out of here. Kurogiri. Yes, Shigaraki. All Might. I won't let you. All Might rushed in attempt to catch the leader of the League of Villain, but they were already gone. Izuku. Well, great, they escaped now. Kachan and Shoto, how many villain did you take down? Bakugo, scoff, lost count, around 80. Todoroki. Don't know honestly. Izuku. I am around 124, I could have gotten more but I was busy breaking some kneecap and punching people dick. Bakugo. Huh, I could have done better as well, but I wanted to leave an imprint on those extras' faces. Aizawa, shit-eating grin. Well, I guess that went well, that was some stress reliever, but honestly, problem child, you have put a good show for me. I honestly enjoy those faces. I think you made quite the reputation for yourself. Todoroki. Midoriya, I knew we are meant to become best friend after I am the hand crusher while you are the kneecap crusher and ball crusher. Izuku. Well, I am glad the feeling is mutual, Todoroki, but man, I am sure they love those broken kneecap and destroyed balls. Random villain, screaming in the background, FUCKKKKK, my fucking balls hurt. Random villain, screaming in the background, ah. My kneecap, my fucking kneecap. Izuku, shit-eating grin, see, they like it. It was at this moment that the staff came in and heard the random villain scream and Izuku comment as they wondered what happened. Aizawa. You people are late. Present Mike. Sorry, I guess. Nezu, who was sitting on Vlad's back, was laughing hysterically, scaring the villains that were still somewhat conscious as he watched the villain being taken while they are talking about wanting to get away from the green-haired demon child, and the staff wanted to know even more what Izuku did to get this kind of reaction. Nezu. Ha ha ha. It seems you had a lot of fun, Midoriya. Aizawa. Izuku. That I did. Aizawa. Agreed. Izuku and Aizawa fist bumped, making the staff, more specifically Present Mike and Midnight, shocked to see Aizawa even fist bumping someone and knew that Izuku is Aizawa's favorite student, which is impossible to see these days. The police came and arrested the villains, who were quite traumatized. TIMESKIP. After the students got checked for any injury and found none, Tsukauchi was seen walking towards the staff of UA. Nezu. How was it? Tsukauchi. It was quite well, no students injured except those 3 who had some minor scratches. I am quite impressed that they fought against an army of villain and came out okay, but it seems that the villains are quite traumatized, to say the least. Snipe. Traumatized how exactly? Tsukauchi points at Izuku, who was busy talking with the other, who was praising him, and Shoto and Katsuki for their awesome fight. Tsukauchi. The green hair had done quite a lot of mental damage. They started calling him Ball Crusher and Kneecap Breaker. All Might shuddered, which was noticed by the staff, while Aizawa's shit-eating grin grew even more than before as he enjoying seeing problem child causing trauma to those villain. Nezu, on the other hand, was laughing his ass off. Vlad. What did the kid do? Aizawa. Nothing much, just punched a lot of male villain in the dick really hard and also kept kicking people kneecap, destroying it. Vlad. The hell, that's what you call nothing much. Present Mike. Let's not get on his bad side. Midnight lick her lips, so he enjoy torturing villains. I think I will give him some extra lesson. Aizawa glared, back off Midnight, he's my student, I will make sure to teach him where to hit where it hurts. All Might. You people aren't really helping with the situation. Tsukauchi coughed, listen, I want to just see the recording of the fight since they said that he killed a creature that was designed to kill you, All Might. Nezu. Very well, then we will bring the students back to UA before we show you the recording. Class 1A was then sent back to class as the staff along with Detective Tsukauchi headed towards the meeting room to watch the fight. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and now we will see you in the next video.